Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could all please rise for the pledge. Thank you very much. Before we get started, I have some housekeeping to read. In compliance with the current executive order and the Commissioner of Public Health's rules for school buildings, attendees are required to wear a well-fitted mask that fits completely over their nose and mouth while inside the school building, regardless of vaccination status. This includes during public comment. Spare masks are available for those who need one. Please exercise social distancing while inside the school building. The auditorium seating is set up to provide that distance between attendees who are not immediate household members. Restrooms and hand sanitizer will be available for meeting attendees. To reach the microphone for public comment from this side of the auditorium, please walk to the back and around behind the PA control desk. This is the microphone for public comment in the center, your center left. We thank you in advance for your cooperation in promoting a safe and healthy environment for this meeting. And I'd also like to thank the Jonathan Law staff once again, and our tech folks and administration for working hard to provide us with this meeting space. Ms. Griffin, can we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Adam DeYoung.
Here.
Megan Doyle.
Here.
Andrew Fowler. Susan Glennon.
Here.
Emily McDonough Souza.
Here.
Rita Hennessy. Polly Mulrennan.
Here.
Una Petrosky.
Here.
Betsy Ratner.
Here.
Cindy Wolf Boynton.
Here.
9 members present.
Thank you, Ms. Griffin. We move on to student reports. This evening, I believe we have Jonathan Law would be going first. So we have Aiden King and Jackson Waters.
Thank you and good evening, board members. It is a pleasure to be with you once again for our monthly review. As always, I will begin tonight with some law-amazing news. The music department has just had 9 students participate in the CMEA Southern Region Honors Festival last weekend. They are currently working with Florence Choir to set up a workshop for students with the Director of Choral Activities at UConn. This week, Jonathan Law will be hosting an optional voter registration session for all eligible students. Interested students will find more information on this in the coming days. In academics, the Support Center remains busy as students adjust to their new schedules in the second semester. To help with the adjustment, teachers visited study halls so students were familiar with the Support Center staff assigned to their study period. The Science Club competed in the Brown University Invitational Science Olympiad this past weekend. The club competed remotely at law. Lastly, digital copies of the 2022-2023 program of studies have been sent to all underclassmen this past week. It is that time of year again for our students to begin planning for the future courses in the upcoming school year this fall. And now Aiden with athletics.
In law sports action, our boys indoor track team finished second this past Thursday night at the CIAC Class M Championship, finishing only 2 points behind the champion. Our wrestling team has their upcoming CIAC Championship meet this week and are having a great season. Our gymnastics team finished in second place at this year's SCC Championships this past Thursday. Our girls basketball team clinched the SEC Quinnipiac Division title, improving their record to 12-6. This is the first title in JLHS girls basketball history. The rest of our winter teams are finishing up their regular seasons over the next 2 weeks in preparation for the playoffs later this month. Now on to school counseling and college and career. On February 23rd, the school counseling department will host its annual Sophomore Symposium for grade 10 students and their families. The purpose of the symposium is to promote early college awareness, planning, and preparation. The panel of speakers is college admissions professionals from the University of Rhode Island, Fairfield University, Southern Connecticut State University, Marist College, and Champlain College. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now we have foreign. We have David Gaetano and Arzu Gaza.
Hello, board members. I'm Arzu Gazak, and I'm here again today with David Gaetano to represent Foreign High School. We are so excited to be here to speak in front of you guys tonight and share all that has been happening in our school recently. First, we would like to mention some of our recent athletic successes. As the winter season approaches its end, our sports teams begin to reach their final games and meets. Many teams such as wrestling, hockey, basketball, and indoor track have been able to celebrate their senior nights in recent weeks, honoring a successful final season. At the recent SCC Championship meet for indoor track, senior Bassett Idris won first place in the 600-meter run, and Ava Stuybeagle placed second place for pole vault, tying our school record of 9 feet. They were also successful at the Class M state meet, leading them to soon compete at state opens. Also in sports, wrestling recently had their Teacher Appreciation Wrestling Meet, which allowed them to honor teachers that have had a positive impact on their lives. The event was a great success. Moving on to academics, students have begun the second semester strong after completing midterms. Students in AP U.S. Government and Politics recently held their presidential campaign presentations, in which candidates worked with their teams, gave speeches, designed TV ads, set a campaign budget, planned a fundraiser, and issued brochures to create campaigns. Ella Philpott was elected president after a lot of hard work, so we congratulate her. In the realm of English, the Main Street Mirror has released their February edition of the Main Street Mirror, highlighting stories about the Super Bowl, National Pizza Day, and an overview of the first semester. Students were excited to read about these relevant topics and look forward to the release of future issues as well. Students in the music department who had been selected for Southern Regionals and for the Southern Regional Ensemble had their performances last weekend, including students Bella Mima, Leila Marie Dantes, and Olivia Salai in the Southern Region Honor Choir. We are very glad that they were able to showcase their talents after a great deal of preparation and congratulate them on their great performances. I'd now like to hand the discussion off to David.
Hello, board members. Thank you, Arzu. I'd just like to take a little bit of time to discuss some of the foreign news from the past week, past few weeks. When we last talked, students were getting ready for midterms, like Arzu was saying, and we're very happy to report that we had a very successful week of exams. We'd also like to acknowledge how hard our ASAP tutoring club worked to get all of our students prepared for these exams. In other news, 2 of our students, Layla Marie Dantes and Violet Wilson, recently won the Congressional App Challenge, where students were prompted to create an app to help fix a problem. The app they created, named Olive, was selected over numerous other entries across the region, a nutrition app that promotes healthy eating habits by focusing on both physical and mental health. Violet and Leila Marie will be honored by Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro at a ceremony later in the year. We're also happy to announce the addition of Mr. Morales to our security staff and are looking forward to his continued stay at Foreign. A few weeks ago, Foreign celebrated World Read Aloud Day by having virtual authors visit young adult authors, Christina June and Mia Garcia. In these presentations, our students were able to ask impactful questions and spark dialogue about reading. Last week, we acknowledged our amazing guidance staff during National School Counseling Week, and this week, we've started our February Break Spirit Week. In terms of clubs, our drama club held auditions, and we selected the cast for this year's show, Mamma Mia. They've been hard at work the past few weeks, painting sets, going over lines, and planning for a more normal show at the end of this drama season. Our giving table prepared meals for the Milford Police and Fire Departments over the past few weeks. These students are learning how to prepare different kinds of meals, while also building a community-driven mindset. Over the past week, in particular, our clubs have been getting ready for Valentine's Day, expressing our appreciation for one another at Foreign. The FBLA Club, Future Business Leaders of America, sold carnations for today, and our student government sold paper hearts to display on the halls, giving back to the American Heart Association. Arzu and I would like to thank all of you members of the board for allowing us to share amazing things our students are doing in the Foreign and Milford communities, and we really appreciate this time to speak on our school's behalf and are looking forward to our meeting next month. Thank you.
Thank you, students. We appreciate your coming to give us an update. As always, you're free to go. Take care of whatever you need to take care of this evening. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. I just have a brief statement to make before we start. So the governor's announcement last week on masks set in motion a process that has yet to be completed. Absent any requirement that boards of education specifically take action, this is considered an administrative decision to be determined by the superintendent in consultation with the director of our health department and our medical advisor, with consideration given to any guidance or stipulations set forth by the Connecticut Departments of Education and Public Health in the coming days. With that said, I'll read the public comment statement. Just please remember that the microphone for public comment is over here, and everybody needs to have their masks on. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with Milford Public Schools. Security issues and matters relating to grievances and negotiations will not be permitted. Consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, discussion of students is prohibited absent parental waiver. Public comment does not allow for two-way conversation between speakers and the board. We welcome and appreciate your comments and opinions, and all are always taken into consideration. Please note our meetings are televised and live streamed on YouTube. We ask that you state your name and your address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Comments should be addressed to the board and must pertain to the business of the board. We ask that you speak up and directly into the microphone. Feel free to reposition it if you need to. Mr. Fowler is our timekeeper. He'll indicate when 15 seconds remain and then time at 3 minutes when we ask that you leave the microphone so the next person can speak. So again, remember to walk around the back of the auditorium to reach the microphone on this side if you need to, and this is the proper microphone to be using. So with that said, I will open the floor for whomever would like to speak for public comment tonight.
My name is Mason. I just wanted to share my experience because I don't like to wear masks. Today I was kind of feeling anxious and I was doing a writing assignment and reading where you had to write something, and I took off the mask to take a drink of water, and I felt a little better because it was heating me up. I also think that kids should have a choice to wear the mask if they want to, or if they don't want to wear the masks. If they want to wear the mask, they can. If they don't have to. Also, my little brother has to go to the nurse all the time with a bloody nose, and I really don't like that because I really love my brother, and I don't like him just going to the nurse just because he's wearing a mask and getting a bloody nose. Also, sometimes it gets very hard to breathe in it because sometimes at gym we have to keep them on, and it's really hard to breathe. Also, at lunch we can't talk straight to each other. Say that my friend's back here, I have to face them and talk to them, I have to face forward and talk to them, which is really hard. Also, it's hard to hear the teacher, and we have to get spoken to a lot to speak up, and it's kind of annoying because we're just trying to talk. And the teacher gets to sit at her desk with the plexiglass while her mask is off, and we get to keep it on. So I just think that if you guys don't choose to let us have a choice, maybe you could get us something to have a tiny mask break sometimes. I hope you guys have a great night and take this into consideration.
That was great. My name's Terry Smith, 90 Snow Apple Lane. I want to thank you for your hard work and dedication to our children, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I've spoken to the board before on the subject of masks. At that time, we were full on in the middle of a pandemic. While many didn't agree with the masks all along, it was certainly easier to comply and understand the fear that people had. And so, for the past 2 years, many parents, against their own beliefs of what is best for their own children, mask their children every day to comply and do their part. I am one of those people. Many people who are here tonight are coming to you to show that they've listened, they complied, and now it's time to get back to normal. Numbers have been down, the majority of children, parents, and teachers are vaccinated, and many students are testing even weekly. What other metrics are necessary to determine that life needs to get back to normal, or will this go on forever? In the beginning, I begged for a parent survey, and at that point, Lamont stepped in with his mandates. Now I'm pleading with you again. Please survey the parents. Per your letter, you are meeting with different experts. Per your meeting, you're meeting with different, your letter, you're meeting with different experts to make this decision. When will you meet with the true experts of each and every child that stands here tonight or is listening at home? I, along with the help of my pediatrician, am the true expert of my children and their medical needs. I am the one who assesses my children's mental needs and health each and every day when they come home to me. I would also like to remind everyone that the Milford Board of Ed is not accountable to the state DPH, the local DPH, or the SDE. The Milford Board of Ed represents the parents and the taxpayers of Milford. Today, parents are simply asking for parental choice. There are at least 23 other districts that immediately put out communication to their people that they will offer parental choice. Have you reached out to them and asked what data they are using to make this decision? Connecticut is one of only 14 states that still requires school children to be masked. Have you looked at the metrics in the other states to see how they are faring without the masks? Social and emotional learning has been a huge topic of discussion here in the meetings recently. There are many studies that have shown the detrimental effects that the masks have had on our children, from reading and speech issues to depression and anxiety, as well as physical health issues. Are we considering these issues when making this decision? In a prior meeting early in the pandemic, while engaging with the local health department about masking, a specific board member asked if those issues had been discussed or considered in making these decisions. The answer was simply no. So this is the same organization that you intend on meeting with in order to make your decision. Why would you rely on the recommendations of people who do not consider the whole child and the social emotional needs of the children that you serve? In closing, I would like to say that if you do make the decision to keep the masks on our children's faces without our consent, one more second, it would be in everyone's best interest that you share the overwhelmingly clear data that you are using in making this very serious decision with the parents. Thank you.
Hi, Holden or 272 Gall Street. Good evening, Milford Board of Ed. I would like mask wearing to be a choice. Right now, masks are mandatory and every child in Milford is in masks all day long at school. It affects every child and person in Milford. I feel it's wrong because in the Declaration of Independence, the unalienable rights, which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, have been given by our Creator and are all affected by forcing kids into masks all day at school. It is important to solve this issue because it is very hard to breathe and concentrate in masks. I can't see in my glasses because they fog up from breathing in masks. Most days I don't even wear my glasses and it's bad for my eyes. It's also sad because I can't see my friends or teachers' faces so I can read their emotions. I'm writing this to you so you'll consider masks in school a choice. Sincerely, Holden North.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Anderson-Diven, 85 Jepson Drive. I'm here tonight to speak on mask choice in our schools. I grew up in Milford, went to school in Milford here. Administrators and teachers always used to work with parents in the past for safety and betterment of the kids. Parents need to be heard and have a say regarding their children. I'm 65 years old and I babysit and help out with my 15 great nieces and nephews all week. Part of that job is keeping them safe, not them keeping me safe. I've chosen to be vaccinated for COVID, and when I choose to wear a mask, I do. It is not their job to wear a mask to keep me safe. I'm here to protect them. Since when are children here to protect grown-ups? We are supposed to protect them. Early on with the pandemic, it was determined that children are not at extreme risk with COVID, and yet they are the ones required to wear a mask for 7, 8 hours a day. How do you not see the hypocrisy of this? All the kids I see all week and out and about say the very same things. I used to love school. I don't anymore. I used to be so smart. Now I feel I'm not. That breaks my heart. At this point, teachers, administrators, every parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, coach, custodian have had the opportunity to be vaccinated, if that's their choice. Therefore, the narrative that although the kids might not be impacted, they are spreading it to teachers and families does not play out. We are just starting to see the ramifications and immeasurable damage this has done to our children. Stating that kids are resilient and they'll eventually be okay is just abusive. Clearly, mass choice needs to be in place and let parents do the parenting. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Madeline Paterna, and I am an 8th grader at Harborside Middle School. I first want to thank the board and the administration for the opportunity to speak tonight. I respect how difficult this pandemic has been for you, and thank you for all you've done. As a 2-time winner of the Respect Star Award and Respect Ambassador, I was raised to respect everyone and respect our differences. Throughout this pandemic, I understood how dangerous this virus was for many people, especially the elderly and the people with other health problems. I respected the idea that even though kids weren't really affected, we could potentially give it to our elders or sicker relatives or teachers. So I, like many, did my part by covering my face for 2 years out of respect for those people. But how much longer do we need to be doing this for? It seems to me that this Omicron version of the virus is no worse than the yearly cold or flu, but I'll leave that to the experts. I understand that some of my classmates and their parents still want to wear masks, and I think that they should because that's their choice. But at what point do my parents get to choose what is best for me? So here's my personal story. Every day around 10 a.m. I develop a headache. I know it's because I'm not getting enough oxygen because it doesn't happen when I'm not in school. I also know breathing in my own air can't be good for me either. Recently I was walking alone in the hallway with my mask under my nose to get some air. And a teacher comes up to me and she yells in my face to put up my mask back up. I was shocked and scared. No one has ever yelled at me like that. I felt like a criminal for simply trying to breathe. And my story isn't unique. I mean, you hear the same stories from my other classmates. If you ask most students, their feedback would be similar. Recently, I asked if I could take a tour of foreign high school, as I wanted to see before I decided where I was going to go to school next year. My intention was to go to foreign with my friends because everybody has spoken such good things about the school. I was excited, but I was told because of COVID, I was prohibited to take the tour of school, even with a mask on. And while this made absolutely no sense to me, it did not shock me because, quite honestly, many of the rules do not make sense. For this reason, I will not be attending Milford Public Schools next year. I hope that whoever is making this decision will take into consideration of how students feel and give the choice back to the parents. Thank you for your time.
Hi, I'm Miles Paterna. Thank you for your time to speak. Thank you for this chance and time to speak. Hi, I am a 5th grader at Calf Pen Meadow, and I'm on the Student Leadership Council. Like my sister Maddie, I understand why we have to wear a mask for the past year. Even though I didn't like it, I did it out of respect. But now I'm beginning to see why we have to start taking them off. I used to love going to school. I was happy because I had great teachers and lots of friends. Now when I go to school, I feel anxious and uncomfortable. I feel my stomach is full of butterflies and my chest is heavy most of the day until I go home. I have a hard time hearing my classmates when they speak. It's really frustrating for us and the teacher. And now we are getting yelled at because my classmates aren't behaving, and it's every day. We are good kids because we were in the same class for many years. I think the problem is we're getting frustrated. We can't hear each other, and we can't even see each other's faces to know if we're happy or sad. And we have to stay apart from each other. I can't even play with my friend from another class, and I can't even talk to them. But outside of school, it's okay? It doesn't make sense anymore. I'm overwhelmed and upset when I'm in school. When will it be time for us kids to go back to normal? I know we are wearing masks to protect adults, but isn't it That's what the vaccine is supposed to do. What about protecting us? Haven't us kids done enough? Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Delaney Morin, and I live on 7 Beer Circle in Norfolk, Connecticut. I go to Mathewson, and I'm a 5th grader. Wearing a mask has really affected my life. Wearing a mask in school is very hard. I come inside from recess sweating, and I can barely even catch a breath because I am wearing a mask. It makes me even more hot because the oxygen is bouncing off of the mask and onto my face. Also, wearing a mask has affected my mental health. For example, my best friend forever is moving to another state in about 1 to 2 months. I cannot even see her face, and she will be gone as soon as I know it. I can't talk to her at recess or anything. It's not that I can't only see her face, I can't see anyone else's faces. If I need to know someone, how am I supposed to know who they are without seeing their face? I have lived almost 3 years with wearing a mask, and I believe that it needs to come to an end. I spend like 7 hours in school wearing a mask, and it's very hard for everybody. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Deanna Moore, and I reside at 7 Brewer Circle. That was my child that you just heard from. I would like to speak about an elephant in the room that seems to, I don't know if it's a taboo topic or what, but we need to talk about mental health in these children. Listening to what these kids just said was heartbreaking. And I'm sure some, maybe all of you, I don't know, have children. I'm here for them too. There have been a bunch of children who were put on wait lists for counseling services because of the effects of the lockdowns and the masking. And they had to wait. That tells us that there is a huge need for mental health help in this city. We're a small city with a big heart, right? We have to look out for these children. And at this point, we today, I think, had, a 3.3% COVID positivity rate. That percentage, masks are hurting, not helping. My child just spoke with her friend that's going to be leaving. When they go to recess, the classes can't intermingle. Her friend's in a different class. If my daughter's playing at the basketball hoop and her friend's at the playground, they can't see each other. They're in stations. I mean, what are we running here? I mean, that seems pretty barbaric to me. You know, they're children. They have to socialize. And lastly, I'm not going to take the whole 3 minutes, but lastly, they're scared too. They're afraid of getting in trouble. They don't, they walk down the hall just like she said before. Somebody screamed in her face. That's horrible. That's what we're doing to our kids. We're scaring them. We're putting fear into them, and that's not healthy. We not only have to take care of their bodies, we have to take care of their brains, and we have to take care of their mental health. Thank you very much for your time.
For the record, my name is Don Lorenzo. I reside at 166 Snow Apple Lane. I'd like to start off by thanking the board for the opportunity to come and speak this evening. In the summer of 2020, I knew my children were going to have a hard time complying with masks, each for their own reasons, and to make everyone's life easier, the schools, my children, and our family, we chose to not comply and homeschool. In August of 2021, a year later, we continue to see no change in guidance and the potential for things to get worse, not only with COVID mandates, but on an educational level. So we decided to continue to homeschool. Regardless of the fact that my children are receiving education at home, I am still in the fight, for lack of better terms. I will stay on the topic that I am here for today, and that is for parent choice for masks. Choice gives parents the opportunity to decide whether to continue to mask or unmask their children. I want to see our children in Milford start to return to some normalcy. It is time. In the beginning, when none of us knew what we were dealing with, maybe the mandates were understandable. But as time has lapsed, I think we should all know and recognize by now that the masks are not stopping anything. If they did, we wouldn't be seeing rises of COVID in the past few months during seasonal spread. You cannot dodge a virus. that has been proven on many levels, especially through Omicron. Omicron spread, masked, unmasked, vaxxed, unvaxxed. It didn't make a difference. You have had plenty of parents come before this board today and in the past, respectfully asking to be heard on this topic. I know you cannot answer questions, but I'd like to pose a few for all of you to ponder. How many phone calls needs to be made? How many emails, I'm gonna cry, darn it. How many emails need to be sent? How many rallies need to be held, both on a local and state level, by parents looking to have the right to decide for their children what they feel is best for them? When you as a board are going to fight for us? When are our voices going to be heard by you to fight on our behalf? If masks are being kept for the sake of health and not for monetary and political gain, until they are removed, you won't know if the masks work or not. Let's keep in mind there is plenty of science to back up that they don't stop the transmission. Respectfully, I challenge the board today that whatever is going on at the Capitol, whatever decisions are being made, it is time for parent choice to be recognized and put in place here in Milford. Thank you.
Go ahead, say your name. Say your name. Okay, just say what you want to say about math. Go ahead. Say the microphone. Okay. Go ahead. Say it. Okay, my name is Alexandra Ayala, and I live at 106 Burn Plains Road. This is my son, one of my sons. He's 5-year-old, and he wanted to say that he is tired to wear a mask because he can breathe. I come from a communist country, and what's happening here right now, it never happened in a communist country back in the 1990s. Like everybody else said before, you know, we all comply with the rules, but now it's time for our kids to breathe. My son today, he was scared to cough because he's gonna get in trouble. My older son, he got in trouble because his mask was under his nose. He was sent to the Dean of Students. This is unacceptable. These masks, they are doing more bad to us than us breathing and living our life. So please let our kids breathe. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Scarlett Kuba, and I'm in 7th grade. I go to East Shore, and this is a letter I wrote to the superintendent. The amount of peers the mask is affecting mentally and physically is increasing day by day. I have talked to many students who agree with me and also want the mask off. If you want to wear the mask, you are very welcome to. I have absolutely no problem with other people's decisions, your life, your choice. I have a 3-year-old sister with an IEP in pre-K who goes to speech at her elementary school. How will she improve her speech with the mask? She's being graded on her peer interaction when these children aren't even allowed to share toys or play together unless it's outside and 6 feet apart. It is absolutely heartbreaking having to watch my 3-year-old sister go completely silent when I have to put her mask on. I want to see my friends smile. All we are asking for is a choice. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Chad Van Vleuten. I'm a 41 Regent Girls. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a father of 3. I have a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and a 2-week-old. I'm here tonight to beg you, please give parents the choice about whether mask our children or not. My wife and I have seen firsthand the damage 2 years of masking has done to our children. They are not being given the education they deserve. We are one of only many of the westernized countries in the world that require young children to be masked for so long. Our friends in Europe have children who have been mask-free in schools for nearly this whole time and are absolutely no worse than our children are. There have been many articles published recently showing the negative consequences of prolonged mask wearing. According to the recent article in the National Review, face masks perpetuate real educational and emotional harm on our students. A mask muffles the voice and obscures the face. That's why we see all the politicians remove them to speak. This harms early phonemic awareness and critical aspect of our early literacy. My wife is currently teaching our son to read at home because he isn't being given the access to the skills he needs with his mask covered all day. The article also goes on to say that studies find that word identification is significantly compromised because of masks. Masks also hamper the facial recognition and hinder relationship building, key components to children's emotional development. Dr. Kataya, in your most recent letter, you spoke of how difficult this decision was. You're correct. That's why it should be made by the parents and nobody else. We are asking for choice. We are asking to be the ones to make the decisions for our children's health and wellness, and nobody else. It's been 2 years now. We need the choice now before more harm and more damage is done. Thank you for your time.
Hello everyone, Jennifer Murphy, 708 East Broadway. I've communicated with many of you. I don't want to get emotional. My personal story, why mental health is important to me. I am a single parent, so I am completely solo for the reason of mental health. I pulled my son out in August to homeschool because I felt I had to protect his mental health in a school environment. This is causing a lot of anxiety for these children. I homeschool, I work from home, and I do my best, and he's thriving right now. I listened to the house session last week, homeschooling and working from home. I listened to the public testimony of many parents talking about mental health issues, including a father who talked about a child who ended up making a decision that was tragic. Yet, the House Democrats denied an amendment to give parents their right to choose. I listened to the Public Health Committee today, talking about all these great mental health things they want to do. Then I watched the Senate today, who again denied an amendment to give a parent a right to choose. It is clear Connecticut is not ready to put mental health at the same priority as physical health. And I hope this is not the case for Milford. I am pleading to you to give parents a choice. I shouldn't have to feel I need to pull my son out to protect his mental health from a place that should be a safe place for a child. I am thankful for the extra time I've had with my son, and we've bonded greatly, and I've learned some things I forgot about along the way with teaching him. He's learned a lot about civil service. He's learned a lot about what it means for the local government, the purpose of the balance of power. So far, I have not seen that in Milford. I am hoping that you're going to give that option to the parents. There is no better advocate for a child than a parent. I've clearly made good decisions for my son on my own. And you need to trust the parent. The parent is the one that knows the best. And I thank you. And I want to thank you for some of you on the stage, some of you who have really taken the time to respond to me, because you really have. But I wanted to come here today. I was hesitant. My son too, he's past his bedtime, but he's kind of happy about that. He gets a little treat. But I really can't emphasize enough the importance of mental health. And I know a lot of people say kids are resilient.
15 seconds.
But if kids are resilient, why are there so many adults walking around saying they have to heal from their childhoods? I want to thank you for your time.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Julia Holthouse, and I live at 30 Hilldale Court. Before I get into why I'm here, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've lived in Milford my whole life. My great-grandparents were Italian immigrants who eventually settled in Milford. My great-grandfather worked for the Milford Public School System right here at Jonathan Law as a custodian. My grandmother, his daughter and fourth-born child, is a first-generation natural-born American. Her husband, my late grandfather, worked in maintenance for the Milford Public Schools. My uncle just retired from the city of Milford. Two of my cousins are both teachers. One still works in the Milford system, and one has since left. I recognize several board members from spending a lifetime here in Milford. Mrs. Ratner was my enrichment teacher at Harborside Middle School. Mr. DeYoung, our kids go to school together and are on the same swim team. I see some other familiar faces, I won't mention them. I love Milford because of these connections, because raising your kids in a tight-knit community is important to me and my husband. This brings me to why I'm here tonight. I have 4 kids in the Milford public school system, 2 at East Shore and 2 at Orchard Hills. My older 2 daughters had the pleasure of ending their elementary school years without any of the traditional fanfare of years prior. They both started middle school, no up and out celebration, no end of the year trip, no moving on ceremony. They both started middle school, arguably some of the most uncomfortable years of our lives, masked and socially distanced. My older daughter, who is 12, said to me the other day that sometimes she eats lunch alone at a table because her usual lunch companion has speech therapy. My other daughter tells me how kids get yelled at for drinking water because the masks are down. And my youngest is 5 years old. He has never had a normal year of school. His first year of preschool was cut short because of the shutdowns. He started his second year of preschool late because of all the uncertainty, and of course, he was masked. He went to kindergarten in a mask, and to be honest, he doesn't even know why he's wearing one. At this point, I don't know what to tell him because even the CDC data is inconclusive on masking. His mask comes home every day soaking wet and dirty. Some days he chews holes in them. I've emailed pictures of my son's mask to everyone on this board, as well as the superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of the health department, the governor, and every state legislator. I received 1 reply from this board, and it didn't even address the extremely unhealthy position we are putting our children in. If a 5-year-old doesn't know why he's wearing a mask, should we expect him to recognize that when the mask gets too wet from saliva or soiled from snack and lunch, it's time to change it? I don't even know if he knows enough to not put the mask back on if it falls on the floor.
15 seconds.
These are not things our children should have to worry about, and that is why I'm asking the board to leave the choice to mask children up to the parents. We have been under emergency order for nearly 2 years, and so many decisions have been taken out of our hands. Masking in school, masking on planes, following very specific procedures to keep jobs. It needs to end. Parents are the ultimate authority on their children, and parents should be allowed to decide whether or not we mask them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Unger. I live at 21 Sumner Avenue here in Milford, Connecticut. I have a senior here at law, Go Law, and I have an 8-year-old daughter who I have currently homeschooled. I kind of want to take a different approach tonight if possible. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for having us here and listening to us. I know it's probably been exhaustive, but as you can imagine, we are equally, if not more so, exhausted. I first want to say thank you so much for actually hearing us a bit and taking precautionary measures to keep our kids safe at school. One such activity you took was to make sure that we had proper filtration systems for our schools. I understand we have the MERV 13 filters at schools, which help exponentially, at least 65%, filter out viruses in our schools. So thank you so much for taking that advisement under your wing, and would make a recommendation that they do have a better filter now that's 95% effective, the MERV 16. So maybe that's something we could think of. And as far as saying thank you, I want to say that making that one simple change that is one that I actually had recommended at one point, we have made a safer, much, much safer environment for our children to be. And because of that, I'd like to also talk about something today that is controversial, but also isn't often talked about as it pertains to masking children. One is the environment that exists between my child's mouth and this mask. Your child, you, everyone, it is not discriminatory. However, it is more harmful to each child. As we know, children of younger age have a higher respiration rate. And because of this, this is called, this little pocket that is created in between here, both captures and traps
carbon dioxide that our children exhale, and it doesn't allow proper filtration for oxygen to come in. And because now that we have these great filtration systems, it should be fair to say that these masks, who are often obsolete and do not help prevent any kind of COVID disease or otherwise from entering our bodies, can be taken off. I have exhaustively researched many studies that will explain that these masks are more harm to our children and ourselves, as a matter of fact, than the coronavirus itself. We now know that transmissibility among children is less than 1%. So when you compound that with the filters that we put into our schools, we can be confident that our children will be safe to enter schools without these masks. I will, because I've exhausted so much and I have such little time, I will be sharing with all of you the studies that I have.
First, I'd like to take a minute to thank you all for being here tonight. That was my wife. She does extensive studies, as you can see, on how much this affects our kids. As a lifelong resident of Milford and one that grew up in this entire school system, it's sad that we have to be here tonight in front of you to plead our case, to protect our kids, for our families to protect their kids. Ask your kids when you go home tonight what it feels like to be in these masks all day long. Ask them what it feels like to stand next to their friend but be 6 feet apart, but they can't converse with each other. Ask them what it's like to drink a glass of water and get reprimanded by their teachers, their instructors, or their superiors. It's not a good feeling. I can tell you from a person that we went from 2 people working in our household to 1, it also puts a detriment on some people's income, because now that other person has to stay and homeschool the child. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'll work 10 jobs to make sure that we can do that. Our goal tonight is to make sure our kids can be in that safe environment, mask-free, enjoy their life, enjoy their schoolhood, growing up in the town that I grew up in that I love so much. It's sad that it comes down to the possibility of us wanting to leave this state, this town, because we're dealing with such hardships as this. Other than that, these kids, look at them. Look them in the face and tell me it's not sad that we have to be here. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Charles Pritchard. I live at 91 Jepson Drive. I don't have a big speech or anything like that. I just want to let you all know, everybody that's on the stage here, that there's a population of us that are totally awake to what is going on in this entire world, and especially in Milford. I grew up in Milford my entire life. I know everybody here, and I have a 5-year-old son that's in preschool, and I also have noticed many ongoing issues with the whole masking, aside from mental behaviors and let alone having to tell my son to give space to other kids. That's a memory that I don't want to have, and I'm going to have for the rest of my life, just because of last year. And I see the disappointment in his face, and I'm standing up for all the children around that age group in Milford. And I want to let you all know that we are awake, and we're not going to let this go, because this mask is going to go out the door. And that's all I have to say about that. Have a good night.
Good evening, Raquel Hernandez Bonesi, 83 Beach Avenue. This past November, you ran on promising Milford that you will be more transparent and accountable, especially to parents, your clients. You have not done so. I'm just going to ask you one big favor. Seeing that you probably don't have any children that come home, like these children come home to these parents, I'm going to ask each of you, tomorrow morning, get up, get on a school bus wearing a mask, and go to school. Hop on a bus, pick a different school. Shadow Shadow one of those students, and then let's talk at 4 o'clock. Go shadow. I'm surprised we don't have many teenagers here tonight, because teenagers, their skin has been affected. Today, as I was watching my typical lunch duty where I work, they were complaining during lunchtime that their faces, the seborrhea and everything else that normal teenagers go through, they're really dealing with that. And some of them, the poor things, their faces are awful. And it's all because the masks. Look around you, and you tell me how many people here are wearing the mask in the right place. Because I see a lot of noses sticking out. That's right. That's right. Every restaurant...
Keep your comments up here. Address us.
All the adults out there tonight having dinner, not sitting even 3 feet away from each other, they don't want to be protected. So please give parents the right to choose. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Erin Coyle, and I live at 55 Commodore Place. Since the beginning of returning to in-person school, nothing has been farther from the science. Dr. Kataya continued to send out emails citing her transparency, citing metrics and data, when in reality the reopening plan all hinged on funding. Is it true that ESSER funding would stop or have to be returned should the schools who took funding end masking? That's certainly how it sounded listening to the Senate today. The hearing ended today with the speaker saying, and don't quote me, something along the lines of, it's important to continue the state of emergency to get federal funding and SNAP funding. This isn't science, it's politics and greed. Almost 2 years into this, we now know that cloth masks do nothing. Unless you're wearing a properly fit N95 mask, then there is no point. It makes me so sad that there are people out there letting children bear the burden of thinking that if they took their mask off, that they could kill someone. First of all, that isn't true. And second, why would you ever put that worry on a little kid? Science doesn't change over town and state lines, but you know what does? Politics. Children, who are the least vulnerable population, should not be masking to make adults feel comfortable. Why can't concerned adults wear a properly fit N95 to keep themselves safe if that's how they feel? I also cannot believe what the teachers' unions have gotten away with. Last year, Milford Public School were not full-time over a contractual 30-minute lunch and 30-minute prep, not science. If it does come down to your decision, please do the right thing and have it be mask optional. Have any of you ever worn a mask for 7 hours straight? I highly doubt it. When teachers and faculty take their lunch breaks, do they get to talk to each other? Most likely, but our kids do not. Something else that really resonated with me and upset me, because I've spoke to quite a few of you, either through email or on the phone, is that contrary to popular belief, you guys don't actually really know each other all that well. And you actually don't really talk that much. And you know, that really pissed me off because you're making huge decisions for my kids. How dare you not talk? How dare you not discuss these things? I mean, that just seemed really crazy to me. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know each other? You're making huge decisions for my kids. Why aren't you talking about this stuff? How is it that every weekend our kids go to sports, parties, play dates, but every Monday they mask back up? Don't you see the lunacy in this? We're the laughing stock. Connecticut's been on the news. People are like making fun of us. This is not science. This is politics. And if you, I don't understand this. Like, please give us mask choice for our children. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board this evening?
Well, excuse me. Come on over.
How about that game last night, huh? Oh my goodness. Good. That was cool. It was a good game. I saw the game and I saw all those people, you know, in close quarters. No one wearing masks. Everybody out enjoying the time, right? Everyone enjoying the game. I mean, we watched it on TV. We're going into restaurants. People are not masking up. We're going into stores. People are not. There are a selected few people going into stores with masks, but those are the ones that are concerned for their own health. Nobody's doing it. Let's unmask these kids. I have 3 kids in the school system, 4 kids, but let's unmask these kids. They don't need the mask anymore. My kids are young and they're confused, and I'm sure you maybe may have some kids in the school system, but we don't need these masks anymore. The world is shutting those masks off. Let's shut the masks off. Let's just eliminate them, okay? My concern is my 3 children that are in Orchard Hills, and they have to wear a mask every day. Every day I have to remind them, where's your mask? Where's your mask? Every time we go on the bus, they gotta have a mask. Where's your mask? Listen, we gotta get rid of the masks. They're poisoning these children. They're confused and they're getting poisoned right now. They can't see the teacher's vocals. They can't see their mouth talking. They can't watch what's happening. They can't learn. They can't be social. It's disturbing at all levels. We've gone through this a whole year. Let's get the masks out of the question. And you guys look at, everyone's up there with a mask. I know you guys are sitting there like, I don't want to wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask. Look, I took my mask off. Look, is that bad? I'm not putting the mask.
You need to put the mask back on, please.
Okay? Thank you. My name is Daniel Lagas. I live at 959 New Haven Avenue in Milford.
All right. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. All right, what a great way to spend Valentine's Day, right? All right, I'm Matt Paterna, doctor in town. 2 kids. You heard from both of them earlier. I was actually going to read off of this, but I think I'm not. I think I'm just going to speak from my heart. It is absolutely heartbreaking to hear my daughter say that she's getting yelled at school because she's walking down a hallway by herself and she wants to take a breath of fresh air. It's sad that she wanted to go visit the high school that she planned on going to just because she wanted to make a decision between that and another school, and she was told she couldn't, which makes absolutely no sense. It's heartless. And it's senseless, and it's terrible. My son was a perfectly normal kid, and now he's got full-blown anxiety. I mean, come on. And these are kids that were perfectly healthy. What are we doing? Can you guys hear me? Can you nod your head? Because I can't see your faces. I have no idea what you're thinking. What do you think our kids are doing in class? They can't see expression. How do they know what other people are thinking if you can't see their faces? It's not right. What are we protecting against anymore? Think about it. A year ago, I would understand. We'd put the masks on. Everybody here put the masks on. Nobody here is anti-mask, all right? But we want accountability for what's happening. Think about it. You guys have done a really good job. I want to give you credit. We've gotten to this point, and as far as I know, we haven't had too many major illnesses in Milford. So kudos to you guys. You're doing a great job. You vaccinated 92% of the Board of Ed that works in this town. That's even with what the state of Connecticut has for Milford. I think that's pretty darn good, guys. 92%. Why do we do this? So we could keep our masks on forever? What do we do this for? You guys all lined up, all said, okay, we're gonna get vaccinated, right? And now here we are when the numbers are going down, and we know they're gonna keep going down, and we still want to talk about putting masks on. I know you haven't made your decision yet, Dr. Katai, and I assume this is your decision, and you're gonna get guidance from other people, right? But we want to know what metrics are being used. Whatever decision you decide, we want to know what metrics, what science, what data is being used to make that decision. And if we're going to talk to experts and we're going to have doctors and the Department of Health, I would also suggest you take me and you take 3 or 4 other people that are in this audience who know a lot about the subject. We are not ignorant. We know what's going on.
15 seconds.
Thank you. All right, and I'll leave you with this. There was a survey done in Milford. 76% of the parents that were surveyed said that they would like mask choice. I would ask Dr. Kutaya to send out a survey.
My name is Athena Blude, and I live on Meadowside Road. I'm going to read you a snippet from a study that was done on April 2021 by the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. The findings overwhelmingly support that both healthy and sick people experience increase in breathing dead space, volume increase in breathing resistance, increase in blood carbon dioxide retention, decrease in blood oxygen saturation, increase in heart rate, increase in blood pressure, decrease in cardiopulmonary capacity, increase in respiratory rate, shortness of breath, and difficulty breathing, headache, dizziness, feeling hot and clammy, decreased ability to concentrate, decreased ability to think, drowsiness, decrease in empathy perception, impaired skin barrier function with itching, acne, skin lesions, and irritation, overall perceived fatigue and exhaustion. The studies further support that decreased blood oxygen saturation and increased carbon dioxide due to extended mask wearing have the potential to cause chronic sympathetic stress response induced by blood gas modifications and controlled by brain center, triggering immune suppression and metabolic syndrome and cardiovascular and neurological disease. That is a mouthful. I would also like to state that the CDC has come out publicly, and I'm sure you all know this, stating that cloth masks do nothing. That the only way that masks are effective is if they are properly fitted N95, like suction to your face. When you take them off, there are indentations on your face. That is impossible for children to wear. I've seen my son drop his mask, step on it, and put it back on his face. And I know many other children do the same thing. So we are not, in fact, there's no mitigation with mask wearing. The only thing that actually proves, like one of the ladies stated, that helps with prevention with viruses is ventilation. So the plexiglasses also just increase your chances of getting the virus. The masks on your face where you're not able to breathe as our bodies were designed to do, plexiglasses do nothing. So this is just nothing but what the New England Journal of Medicine cited back in May of 2020. It's nothing but just a reflexive response to anxiety that should not be put onto children. So this is a case where we as parents and we the people demand mask choice.
Good evening. Sorry, my broken English. My name is Eveline Oring, 92 Dale Drive. I have 2 daughters, one 9 and another one 3 years old. I don't want to be emotional. My 3 years old cry every day because the teacher changes her mask all the time. And her teacher sends an email and say, Victoria have to wear this mask. She changed for this paper mask, and she have her like soft enough, so I think she's breathe better. And she tell all the time when I go pick it up, her like kind of, I have to yell my children because she's wrong. She's not wrong, she just can't breathe. The other day, I stalk her teacher because I want to see her face, because I don't know her face. And I show my daughter, do you know who this lady? And she say, no, this is your teacher. She don't even know her teacher's face. My 9 years old is autistic. She create anxious, and she start pinch her skin because she don't like to wear masks. She can't even look left and right in her class because at lunchtime, she can't even say hi. They don't laugh. But the teacher, stay without masks, she say. And the excuse is, it's because she's teacher better, so the kids can understand her. But how come the teacher can understand our children? Because how they know our children's learning with the mask on the face? It's impossible. And my daughter have this anxious now, both of them. And I just think like at this point, why we still have this mask? My husband 3 weeks ago get COVID. All of us kiss each other, sleep in the same bed, hug each other. We don't got sick, nobody got nothing. So how you know for sure the kid's gonna be sick. Kids don't get sick. For 2 years, my kids never get nothing. I got COVID twice. My kids never got anything, and they sleep with me in bed. So how you know our kids is safe with masks in school, but they not? The mental health of our kids is worse. My kids have a scare about everything now. And like I say, she pinched her skin in her arms. And the other day I saw she pulled her hair from the root. Do you think it's normal? I know she's autistic, but this has never happened with her before. My 3 years old, she yelled at me to put this type of mask on her because she said her teacher's gonna yell at her because she have the wrong mask. That's not right for our children. So just unmask our children. Sorry, my English.
Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board this evening?
Good evening. How are you? Thank you for allowing us to speak our voice. My name is Christine Valacat. I live at 10 Seaview Avenue. I have a fourth grade son that goes to Pumpkin Delight School. Dean, he would like to say something.
Whether we choose to wear a mask or not, kids and adults should be able to have a choice. When my entire class had COVID, I also got it even when we were wearing masks. I'm in fourth grade. One day, if you want to make someone smile and you say something nice, you won't know if they are smiling or not because they're wearing a mask. They really hide your personality if you think about it. You don't know if somebody is happy, sad, or mad. And the thing is that you don't know if you should give someone space or not. I like making people smile. It feels good. But you can't see because they're wearing a mask. This is why we shouldn't wear masks.
Is there anybody else who'd like to address the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment. We're going to move on with our agenda. Anybody who does choose to stay for the rest of the meeting, I am going to ask you to please have your mask on properly. Right, so I'll move on to my chair's report. I'd like to thank everybody that did come out tonight. This is, a very highly emotional topic, and I do appreciate those who have kept the tone very civil and respectful. First off, I do want to report, I'm sad to report that Ms. Hennessy has submitted her letter of resignation from the board effective February 1st, citing health reasons. In accordance with the board's policy, board members' GP19 nominations to fill the vacancy will be made by Ms. Hennessy's 4th District party members and then voted on by a majority of the remaining board members. Ms. Hennessy has been a valued member of the board since 2017, and I hope that you will all join me in thanking her for her service and wishing her well. As I said earlier, board members, the governor's recommendation on masks set in motion a process that involves many moving parts that still need to play out. Tomorrow there is a multi-agency meeting when it is expected the commissioners of the Departments of Education and Public Health will discuss any guidance that they will put forward. And after that, just has been done over the past 2 years, Dr. Kutaya, Ms. Joseph, and Dr. Carlson will consult to formulate a plan. And assuming that there is no requirement that the board actually vote, which I don't see as being the case at this time, the decision is up to Dr. Kutaya. So I do ask that you all be patient and let the process proceed. I trust that the decision will be made with much thought and consideration. So that said, do we have any liaison reports this evening? Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. The Permanent School Facilities Building Committee met twice since our last board meeting where we discussed the final drawings estimates for the Pumpkin Delight additions and renovations, mostly about the size of the gym, and we'll be hearing more about that later in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Any other liaison reports? Ms. Ratner.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. The Milford Prevention Council has been doing a wonderful job expanding the community partnerships. So if anyone is in a club or an organization that would like to be added to our list, we'd love to have you. We recently did some wonderful whole person opioid addiction workshops, and these kinds of things are open to the public. They are listed on the Milford Prevention Council's site. The treatment of the whole person included the opportunity for a collection of variety of techniques dealing with the social, the emotional, and the physical things that happen with addiction. It was excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ratner. Any other liaison reports this evening? Seeing none, we will move on to Superintendent's report. Dr. Kutaya.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Thank you, members of the Board of Education. And just for a quick moment of personal privilege, I do appreciate the public's comments on their position on masking of students. As Ms. Glennon mentioned, there are a series of state meetings this week that will be providing us with additional guidance or recommendations as they have met, and those meetings will occur this week with superintendents and directors of health. I will be doing my due diligence. I'm hearing the request for data, and that's what we're doing. We're taking our time to really get all of the information that we need to make this decision. I am working with Ms. Joseph and Dr. Carlson, but in the end, the decision is mine. So I will be meeting with administrators, our teachers union, the mayor, the health director, our medical advisor, our parent restart group that has been actually a great voice of parents since the very beginning of this pandemic, going way back to, it may even be March 2020, but most certainly the summer of 2020. And we've met regularly since then. We will be developing a framework upon which we will make a decision, and I understand that our community wants a decision now, but we'll be taking our time with the process, and I will release a decision ASAP. Understanding this is a very important piece of information to get out to our community. So with that, we're going to turn things over to Mr. Brown to talk to us about student support services, because we do know that there have been and continue to be needs of our students, social, emotional, mental health needs that have predated the pandemic actually, and have been a plan of Milford Public Schools for a long time. So tonight we're just giving you an update as to the improvements that we continue to make in those areas. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Blessing. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Kataya. Okay. I have the opportunity this evening to speak with all of you about the range of student support services that we are able to provide here to all of our students in Milford Public Schools. The question sometimes comes up as to why do we provide support services to our students? We're an educational agency. One thing that we want to be sure we focus on is making sure that all students can have access to their educational programs, no matter what challenges they face. We want to be sure that our students can maximize their skills and overcome any challenges that might interfere with their progress academically. The other very important piece is to prepare all of our students for what will come after graduation, whether that be seeking a career, seeking employment, or going on to a 2- or 4-year college. It's very important for us to recognize that the time that the students are with us is a time when they can become aware of supports that are available to them, become aware of how to access those supports, and then when they leave us, continue to access those supports in the community. So what are student support services? We have 2 broad categories of support services that we provide to all of our students. Some focus on physical development and physical health, and the others focus on social emotional development or mental health. On the physical development side, we have occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language therapists, and teacher of the hearing impaired. And we also, through the State Board of Education Services for the Blind, consult with a teacher of the visually impaired to support our students. On the social emotional side, we have our school psychologists, social workers, school counselors that we increased dramatically this school year to support our elementary students, and speech language therapists. The speech language therapists, as you notice, are on both sides of, or in both columns here. They work on the physical development with the formation of speech sounds, making sure that students produce all the sounds properly. And then on the social emotional side, social pragmatics to make sure that they're communicating clearly in social situations. The student support services that we provide focus or encompass 3 areas: prevention, evaluation, and intervention. It's important for us to focus on the prevention piece. We put a great deal of effort and energy into making sure that we can be aware of all the needs that students have before a challenge becomes a situation that creates a significant amount of impairment for a student. We have in place teams that meet regularly in each of our schools to consider any student who might be struggling. And if the student is having academic struggles, we consider if they're having struggles in other areas, those areas that I mentioned with their physical development or their social emotional development. No matter where the struggle is early in the game for them, we will intervene. It is sometimes thought that student support services are only available for children with disabilities, and that is not the case. The staff that we have who support students with disabilities also are fully available to support students who don't have a challenge that rises to the level of a disability. And they spend a great deal of time intervening with all children. As we heard tonight from many of the speakers, and as we've had a focus here in Milford for several years, the mental health needs of students is very important for us to address. The COVID pandemic has increased our awareness about the mental health needs of young people, not only in Milford, but across the country. In the document that you have, you see a reference to the United States Surgeon General's advisory from December of last year, a few months ago, focusing on the fact that the strain of the pandemic has made us more aware of the needs of all people in the country, but in particular young people, in particular the young people. Mental health needs of children and adolescents had been increasing prior to the pandemic, particularly with feelings of anxiety and depression. That has been exacerbated by the pandemic. Fortunately, here in Milford, we hired a full cadre of school counselors to come to work in our elementary schools for this school year, and we also increased the number of school counselors working in our middle schools this year. Their focus has been twofold: one, on prevention and making sure that we are teaching students skills to manage the stress that goes along with typical development and the additional stress of the pandemic. In addition, they can provide services and do provide services to students who have more noteworthy needs and where the skill building isn't enough to help them manage and access their educational program. They work closely with our school psychologists and school social workers to make sure that we're addressing their needs. The group of mental health professionals that we have in the school, as I mentioned, are the school psychologists, school social workers, and school counselors. The State Department of Education has offered guidance on what those services should encompass. I'm happy to say that what we provide here in Milford is very closely aligned with the recommendations that come from the State Department of Education. The recommendations from the U.S. Surgeon General for what schools can do to support children also aligns with what we have in place here at Milford. We have been ahead of the game here in making sure that we address the needs of the mental health needs and emotional social development needs of our young people. When it comes to prevention, the main focus for us is on classroom lessons. Those classroom lessons are provided primarily by our school counselors in the elementary schools and in the middle schools. The lessons are focused on standards that come from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, commonly referred to as CASEL. And you can see on the screen and in your handout the areas, the domains that are focused on for those classroom lessons. Another feature of prevention that we can provide is consulting with teachers when they have questions about the needs of a student, and also consulting with parents to make sure that we have collaboration between home and school to support the children. We also do ongoing evaluations with students. Evaluations are broken down into two broad areas. Screenings. Screenings are when there, to use a technical term, there's an inkling of a challenge for a student, and we will take a closer look at what's happening for a child and do a screening which involves observing the child in a classroom, talking with the teachers and talking with the parents about what they're seeing, and then make a determination about what can we do to offer some initial support for the student. If some minor support is helpful for the student to manage the bit of difficulty they're having, that's great. And the student can then be weaned off of that support and continue to do well. And then sometimes we find after the screening that more intensive support is needed. When we question if more intensive support is needed, we can complete what's called a comprehensive evaluation. And then we take a closer look at what are the underlying causes that need to be addressed for a student, and that usually involves a one-on-one assessment with our school psychologist, speech-language pathologist, occupational therapist, or physical therapist. When it comes to intervention, intervention again is broken into two broad areas. There's preventative intervention, which is what I described with our classroom lessons, and then there's more focused intervention, which typically for mental health needs involves counseling, which can be provided individually or in a small group. We also design focused behavior management plans for students to help improve their classroom behavior and also to support families to improve behavior at home if that's a concern. And then in the school district, we have specialized programs where students with significant emotional or behavioral needs can be educated in one of our special programs here in the school district. All of our services support all students through prevention, evaluation, and intervention. One of the key pieces that we've been focused on and that we're doing more professional development with this year is on screening students for significant mental health needs if they're having thoughts of self-injury or suicidal ideation. Our mental health team comes together to intervene and work with those children and their families to get those students the support they need. Later tonight, we're going to hear from Jeff Nielsen, who's going to talk about safety and security measures, and in conjunction with our school resource officers and the Milford Police Department, we can also make sure that any kind of emergency services that are needed can be immediately provided to students. Our school resource officers work closely with our mental health team in the school, and we collaborate and communicate well to make sure that we can get immediate assistance to students when necessary. Well, we're also addressing threat assessment, and we're going to have a training later this spring, next month, to focus on how we can assess the situation when students might make a threat in school. Our school resource officers and the Milford Police Department social workers are going to join us for that training, along with Captain Del Monte, so that we can continue to work closely together to keep the entire school community and the Milford community safe. That's all I have for you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Board members, do we have questions for Mr. Brown? Mr. DeYoung.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for the presentation. I was hoping you could give us maybe a couple of scenarios where you might hear from parents that a child is having some sort of challenge and what that process looks like. So if a parent were to call their school and say, my child is struggling with their mask, or my child is struggling with anxiety, what are the steps that are taken by the school to address those needs?
So either one of our school psychologists, social workers, or school counselors will have a phone communication with the parent and find out specifically what the concerns are. Then we will speak directly with the student's teacher or teachers, if they have multiple teachers, depending on what grade they're in, and compare what some of the observable behaviors are that we're noticing in school and what's being noticed at home. We'll then come together to determine what services can be provided to that student. Sometimes a student needs some short-term counseling to address the difficulties that they're having. Sometimes we need them to have a check-in each day with one of the mental health providers to help ease their transition into school, to help ease their anxiety that they're having. And then sometimes we just put behavior management plans in place to help students tangibly see that they're making progress. We will, continue to monitor how the child is doing and update the parent and get updates from the teacher as the intervention is in place to see if it's effective or not.
That's great. Just from a practical standpoint, if the parent would start with the teacher, I presume, and then the conversation would go from there too?
We're not strict around that, so if the parent contacts the teacher first, that's good. If the parent speaks with the principal first, or a teacher leader first, assistant principal, that would be okay. Or sometimes they'll call the school counselor or school social worker directly. Whatever contact they make is okay with us, and then we'll follow up and make sure that we get the right program in place for the child.
Okay, and just one further thing. If the behaviors are happening at home exclusively and not happening at school, how is that handled? I know that's a real challenge to address at-home behaviors, but how would you go about doing that?
Sometimes, that can be good information for us, and we can explain to a parent what if we see some of those similar behaviors in school, how we intervene to keep it at a low level, and then describe those strategies that we have in place in our classrooms that are effective for the child, and then help the parent figure out how, given the structure of their family situation, they can incorporate some of what we do in school. And that can be quite effective, actually.
And at the high school level, would you deal directly with the child in a situation like that? In other words, if a child came to a counselor and said, I'm having anxiety over such and such, but I can get through the day, but when I get home I'm having struggles, would you do the same thing?
Yeah, it's always important to include the family in providing support to a young person of any age. We do have independent adolescents, and sometimes their frame of what they like to share with their parents and what they want to share with a counselor in school varies. When we think a parent needs to be involved in the process more directly, we will work with the student to make sure that it's okay with them for us to speak with the parent. And when we approach that properly, that's usually not too difficult. Sometimes it takes a meeting or two with the adolescent to help them understand that. But I've never had a situation where an adolescent said absolutely not. But you do have to have good rapport.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Ms. Ratner?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. And thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. It's a simple question. In elementary, middle, and high school, how often does the support team meet? Not counting these extra ones, the wonderful ones that were just recommended by Mr. DeYoung. The other kinds of things that you would see on a regular basis, do they meet weekly?
They meet, generally they meet bi-weekly. If there is an urgent matter, they will meet, at a moment's notice. But they have regularly scheduled meetings at least twice a month to review what's happening.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Just to double up, I know they have some organized classroom activities that they do. How often does a student, let's say I'm in a third grade class, how often might I see this person come into my classroom for these either mini lessons or big lessons?
The schedule varies from school to school at different times of the year. So every student in every grade isn't getting a weekly lesson, but they'll break the classroom lessons down at different points of the year where they're going into different grade levels.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
If I could just dovetail off of Ms. Ratner's question. So are these the classroom lessons that are geared toward prevention? Mm-hmm. These are different from the morning meetings, correct, that teachers are having, I believe, daily?
Yeah. I mean, morning meeting is a great intervention that is a prevention intervention. And that builds a positive school climate within the classroom. And having a positive school climate where the students have a strong relationship with their teacher and their classmates through that process is incredibly helpful, and helps the students to learn to support each other and know that they have support from their classmates and teacher. The classroom lessons are more focused on skill building, and skill building under those 5 domains that are listed in your handout.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sure.
Ms. Ratner?
Yeah. I just thought of one more. It kind of relates to what I think Mr. DeYoung might have been alluding to. It might get to a point where you need to do PPT or IEP if they need outside resource help. That's going to be a recommendation, or will you always be able to help them, even if it's a severe 9th floor Yale situation?
There are times when we do refer a student to special education and do a comprehensive evaluation to determine if they need a very specialized program. Typically, we are able to meet the needs of our students right here in the school district. There are a small percentage of students whose needs go beyond what we can offer as a public school district, and in those situations we'll partner with other agencies and private special education schools to address those children's needs.
Other questions for Mr. Brown? Ms. Doyle?
Hi, thank you. I can't remember what the meeting was a few weeks ago. We talked about girls on Instagram and social media and how they're affecting things. How has the curriculum been changed, or support services to address some of these social media issues that are common? Thank you.
Yes, so we know that social media has a notable impact on the social emotional interactions of students. In our lessons that we offer, we talk about healthy use of social media. That's also part of our health curriculums as well. It falls under the large heading of decision making, and working with students on how they want to be treated by others and how we expect them to treat each other. So that's how we cover that with our young people. That is a challenge, of course.
Ms. Wolf-Boynton?
So piggybacking off of what Ms. Doyle said, I imagine there are some programs that we typically cover year after year, and that there are also some programs that are developed new because of emergent issues. I'm just wondering if very briefly you could list a couple of those programs that we tend to focus on year after year just because of basic need, and then just mention some that are new and are being used to tackle, again, emergent issues.
Sure. In Milford, we have been careful not to take an off-the-shelf program and just bring it into our school district. I think the best way to put it is we Milfordize available tools that are produced to address these needs. But we do draw, some of the programs we draw from on a regular basis would be Responsive Classroom, which is where the morning meeting tool comes from, which Mrs. Glennon mentioned. We also use programs from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, which is commonly referred to as the Ruler program. A feature of that program is the mood meter, which some of you might have your children, if you have children in school, talking about. Those programs focus on building a positive school climate, as I mentioned earlier. We also focus on helping students to recognize their emotional reactions to situations, and then understanding how those emotional reactions guide their behavior, and then help them to choose a better behavior in a situation that might be a challenging situation for them. Those are all good skills for all of us to have. Children love learning those skills. They find it enjoyable. They find it really interesting to think about themselves in that way. It's not something that they typically do. And we also provide lessons on stress management, including mindful breathing, and at sometimes yoga to help them. And it's always surprising, but even middle school students who don't like to do much sometimes love the mindful breathing and learning how to manage stress for themselves. They ask for more of it after it's done. So those are some of the things we typically do.
Other questions? Ms. McDonough Souza?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brown. My question is, I think I have the general gist of the difference between a psychologist, a social worker, and a counselor. And I know that they're all related, but ultimately different. They all work together. And specifically looking at the additional counselors that were hired in elementary school and middle school with the COVID-specific funds, I'm just wondering if you can speak to, focusing on those specific individuals, what we are able to accomplish with those, with hiring those additional individuals in the school system, and what we weren't able to do before that we now are able to do now that we have hired these people and that we are making the transition in moving them into the general fund to keep them with us permanently.
Sure. The main piece and the priority is to have a comprehensive school counseling program which focuses on prevention. So that's a comprehensive school counseling program that is focused on building skills for students to manage typical developmental stressors, to improve their ability to interact successfully with their classmates and also with adults in school. And also to help them to start setting goals for themselves, both short-term and long-term, with the ultimate focus on goals that come with school to career when they're finished with our school district after 12th grade. They are working together along with Sean Smith and Dr. Christiane Gillespie, to develop a comprehensive curriculum that's focused on the state of Connecticut guidelines for comprehensive school counseling. There was a law passed in 2019 that requires school districts to provide comprehensive school counseling programs to all students provided by a school counselor. A school counselor used to be called a guidance counselor, so they're the same thing, although we broadly refer to the profession as school counseling now rather than guidance counseling, particularly because of that prevention piece and skill building that is now part of the role.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Thank you, Mr. Brown. Maybe just a, obvious, maybe not an obvious question, but just a simple question. How many students have needed these services compared to prior years? Obviously, it's an increase, but I guess just ballpark how much?
This year, in our elementary schools to this point, we've had 110 students in the elementary level who have come forward for a screening. We put a new process in place this year to monitor the students who either parents or teachers had a concern about. We're in the process of getting that same system in place at the middle school and high school. We didn't have clear data on that in prior years. Right. But 110 students on face value seems like a significant number in grades K through 5 for us. We do monitor DCF referrals, which are somewhat of an indicator of a family and a child with a stressful life situation. And we are seeing frequent DCF referrals this year. All of those come through my office, and on average, I get about 5 or 6 of those to my office a week. And that's across all grade levels.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Petrosky?
Yes, earlier you said that before the evaluation you do the screening and that's sort of the inkling. What kind of training is available right now for the teachers to be able to get that inkling of something going on?
The training that we have provided and that we continue to provide typically takes place on our professional learning days, which happen during the year. At the beginning of every school year, we update all the staff on the requirements for making a referral to DCF if they suspect abuse or neglect. And that's very important, and that's a high priority. We have also had available mental health first aid training that some teachers have been able to take advantage of. But the primary training, which we're fortunate to have here given the staffing that we have with the school psychologist, social worker, and school counselor available at each school, is ongoing consultation and awareness of what's happening with the students in the schools, and being able to rapidly and nearly immediately consult with the teacher if they're noticing anything different about a student, and through that process focus our classroom teachers on what they should be tuned into for a particular child. In some ways that's quite customized training because it's specific to a particular student. Now, if you were a teacher and I were a psychologist and I spoke with you about one of your students demonstrating a particular problem, and I would talk with you about what you can do and what you can look for, you would take that with you forward, and then when you notice another student in a similar situation, you would have that information that was very applicable to a situation you already faced. When we do team meetings, an entire team hears that information, particularly at the middle school level, which is quite helpful. In a lot of school districts, they unfortunately don't have the number of staff where there's someone available in each school to be a true part of the school community. There are more visitors to a school, or occasionally are at a school. But we are fortunate to have these staff members in each of our schools every day. So they really are the go-to people and a tremendous resource for teachers and parents because of what we're able to provide here at Milford.
Other questions from board members? Seeing none, thank you so much for Mr. Brown for the informative presentation.
You're welcome.
Very helpful. Okay, next we have the Pumpkin Delight piece.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Glennon and members of the board. I'll be very brief because I know we're running late. But as you know, the Pumpkin Delight Elementary School is our oldest school and has been on the capital improvement plan for many years for upgrading and bringing the facility up to a closer speed to where some of the other elementary schools are in Milford. The City of Milford, through the recommendation of the mayor and approval of the Board of Aldermen, have approved funding for the Pumpkin Delight School project. It is eligible for partial state reimbursement, right? Currently, the reimbursement rate from the state is about 37, a little more than 37% of eligible costs. And one of the requirements of the grant process is that your board needs to approve the plans, specifications, and estimates for the project. The architect who has been hired by the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee is here tonight, Eddie Wadowski, and he's going to give you a brief presentation. Also here tonight, of course, is principal of Pumpkin Delight Elementary School, Sherrod McNeil, and they have been working with the Permanent School Facilities Building Committee. Mr. Fowler and Ms. Wilf Boynton are on that committee and have been doing a lot of work over the last year in getting to this point. This is the final point before you give your approval. It goes to the state, and then the state gives approval to go out to bid. So we're getting very close. Our hope is that we can break ground in late spring, early summer of this year. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Eddie Wadowski from Tecton Architects, who will give us a presentation on what you'd be approving tonight. So thank you.
Board members, while we're waiting, Mr. Wadowski gave us a very nice bound copy of the plans and his presentation.
Good evening. I am going to try my best to be brief on things because I know it's late. So I may go a little faster through things, but if there's anything that I skate over too quickly, by all means, I'm happy to go explain in further detail. For the most part, we tried to set up the presentation to where each of the slides has really a fairer summary of things, so just by flipping through, you should be able to get a pretty good sense of things. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so brief agenda for tonight. We're going to talk about schedule first, then I'll take you through the exterior. First the site plan, and then what the building addition is going to look like. Talk to you about the architectural design, so the plans for the development and the renovations. Show you a few interior images. Talk a little bit about some of the engineering, and then finally we'll finish up with where we are in terms of the budget, and then let you ask your questions. So in terms of schedule, this is the schedule that we've been proposing all along. We've stayed on schedule, I'm pleased to say. As you can see early in 2022, we're about to get our final approvals, and as Jim mentioned, we're hoping to get a shovel in the ground as we get into spring. Ultimately trying to finish the project middle to end, probably the fall of 2023. So in terms of some of the more detailed pieces, we've been meeting, as Jim mentioned, as you folks know from the Building Committee, we've been having meetings throughout the last year. More recently, we've had meetings with the city agencies to make sure that we're accommodating all of their requests. We've done a plan flip with facilities. We've done a formal submission to the building department and fire marshal. We got our building committee approval last week. Obviously, here we are tonight. We are scheduled on March 1st to meet with the state of Connecticut to begin the process. We think it's going to take hopefully about 2 weeks to get our approval to go out to bid. So bidding in late March and through April, and then scope reviews, awarding to the contract, and mobilization, hopefully getting underway in May or June. All right, from a site plan standpoint, this is the existing site. North is facing up here, so you see the existing school. Okay, what we're doing is basically adding on a new addition on the north end that will connect the 2 wings of the existing building. That'll house a multi-purpose space, so new gym and cafeteria, a new kitchen, and a new science classroom. By connecting this, we'll have a new internal courtyard surrounded by the wings of the building. That'll give a nice dedicated area for private play space, gardening areas, and I'll show you a few things that are nice about that as we get into it. We're creating a new staff parking lot towards the north of the building to offset the spaces that are lost that are currently between the 2 wings. We're going to be making some adjustments to the drop-off, mostly repairs and regrading, and shifting an existing playground a little further over to accommodate the new design. Okay, so the main entrance remains where it is at a restored parent drop-off. We're creating a new secondary entrance at a restored bus drop-off. Essentially, the parent and bus drop-off currently, well, they're already, you changed it to this already, right? So once upon a time they were like this. Somehow they got flipped. As we started to look at it, we thought it made more sense from a traffic flow standpoint to return them to how they used to be, and the school has actually already gone forward with that. So it's really just kind of making some physical improvements. We're also creating a screened loading area and at the staff entrance, and let's see, we got recycling and dumpsters up at the end of the new parking lot, which is where everybody wanted it. The school and facilities a little further away from things to help with smells, and we're creating new accessible parking spaces at the main entrance. All right, from a landscaping standpoint, one of the main things we heard was, the proximity with the neighbors on the northern edge, so making sure that we're planting a nice little landscape buffer to separate the vehicular flow from the neighbors. We have new pole lighting fixtures at the new areas. They work with the existing. We're matching the standards. They're all very low. It's a 10-foot fixture, so really not trying to get lighting spill off into the surrounding properties. We have some low lighting fixtures in the courtyard to accentuate the pathways, and we have screening at our new generator and transformer, which is part of our new electrical service that's coming at the very southern end of the site. Okay. From an outside, so this is kind of taken as you're looking towards the new addition with the existing building towards the right there. So you can see on kind of in the center of the picture is the new secondary entrance from the bus loop, which is what we're standing in or right at the side of in this view. The idea is to try and make the building really look like existing, so matching the existing brick. Trying to pull in some natural materials, a wood look, metal panel that would be on the underside of the canopies. We're adding a canopy over the existing entrance and at the new entrance, and then introducing some metal panels that'll frame the clear story windows on the gym and also serve to screen some new rooftop mechanical units that are going to go on top of the existing one-story portion of the building. This is a view taken inside the new interior courtyard. So what we're looking at here on the left, the red brick that you see is the existing multi-purpose space. The windows are currently, they're the same size, length side to side, but what we're doing is bringing the windows all the way down to really accentuate how much natural light comes in there, because the existing multi-purpose space is going to be repurposed as a new media center. And having that direct connection from the media center out into the courtyard, we think is going to be a really special opportunity to be able to take advantage and get outside when the weather is appropriate. On the right side, you see the end of the science classroom, again bringing that those windows down and really getting natural light into the science classroom. And beyond it, you see the corridor that leads to the gym, and I'll talk to you about that in a second. Again, same material palette, the metal panel, the wood look, the brick to match existing. Okay, so from a layout perspective, so again, in turquoise or blue there, you see the new addition, which is the gym, cafeteria, kitchen, and science classroom. After that's constructed, we'll be able to renovate the existing multi-purpose, and you can see the difference in the size from existing to new. Really, the school is quite undersized in terms of what's there for the students, but it works really nicely for a media center. Third part of it is going to be the hardening of the main entrance, putting in the same security standards that have been done in the other schools throughout the district. 4 is, you can see renovation of the existing toilet rooms, and the 5th piece is, in the purple, is where the media center is now, and that's going to be converted into more toilet rooms for the assembly space, as well as a breakout learning area for kind of a more non-traditional project-based learning opportunities. Okay, for the gym, it's a full-size middle school court. Even though this is an elementary school, we're sizing it for community standards in addition to the school's needs. 6 basketball hoops, volleyball standards. We've got 2 big storage rooms. One will accommodate the chairs and tables that are going to be used for the cafeteria to move them out of the way for PE activities, the other for PE equipment. We have a large operable partition where the number 3 is, that's going to be able to open up that gym to the corridor. A little more gracious way of coming into the building for public events. We have tiered seating on either side of the operable partition. And as I mentioned, you can see on number 4, those were the windows we saw flanking the science classroom and that rendering of the courtyard that's going to bring natural light into the corridor, so it's not a dark space. And one thing that's kind of nice, there is a dedicated janitor's closet with a mop sink in the cafeteria separate from the kitchen, so we don't have to have staff going back and forth in case there are messes, and kids, we know there will be. So this is a view inside the gym. You can see on the right there that's showing the operable partition essentially opened up, so you can see it's a really nice wide open way into the courtyard, into the corridor. And then you see the high windows on the left, far side of the gym, bringing, again, natural light into the space. We really want this to be a very bright and warm and welcoming design. The new media center is going to have storage capacity for the 20,000 volumes that the school requested. It's a good-sized expansion on what they have. We have 2 instructional areas, age-appropriate furniture, so there's one for younger students, one for older students. Our circulation desk has a nice clear visual supervision of the space. We have a dedicated maker space for project-based learning. That's right off of the main library, and you'll see that in a second in the next view. We do have a research and an informal seating area on the lower right, and as I mentioned before, direct access into the courtyard. So this is a view looking at the circulation desk. The glassy piece that you see in the rear of the image is the maker space. We see that as a possibility for some really incredible opportunities for programming. Okay, as I mentioned, the security at the main entrance, we have a bullet and blast resistance that match the standards that are being implemented throughout the district, the hardware, the technology, so that there's standardization between schools. Greeter station with a high counter, and also a low gate that allows them to be able to get out quickly to the corridor. In the science classroom, we have counters around the full perimeter of the room, and sinks and cabinets at dedicated stations. This room is set up so that it can be used either as a conventional classroom or as a lab. Dual height instructor station, again, to work with students of all ages, and as I mentioned a few times now, that natural lighting and the direct access to the courtyard. This is a view of the new vestibule. So this is, you're looking down the corridor. On the right side of that corridor is the new interior courtyard. On the left side of the corridor is the gym. But so in the front left here is what you're seeing is the doors to the bus drop-off. And so we've got this bench that's a nice little indoor-outdoor expression, a great place to wait for mom and dad to come and pick you up. For the toilet rooms, really just the mission is making sure that it's durable. It's going to certainly be attractive, but we have multi-station wash fountains, really limiting the amount of operating parts, trying to keep maintenance down, solid plastic toilet compartments, ceramic tile that goes floor to ceiling, and we have vinyl wrap gypsum tiles. Again, the idea being something that's very maintainable, very cleanable, very durable. Tell you a little bit about some of the finishes. We have so what you see where there's the dark blue and the orange, that is the breakout area. We have on one side, where the orange is, we have our smartboard surrounded by writable wall covering. The idea being you have an entire wall to be able to work on projects, sketch out ideas, tackable surfacing opposing. We've got graphics along the new corridor, and we have wall padding and acoustical panels throughout the gym. In terms of flooring, again, trying to make sure that everything is durable and maintainable. It's a poured rubber sport flooring throughout the gym. The kitchen and the servery is all quarry tile, and then we have sheet vinyl in the breakout space and in the media center. All right, try and see if we can wrap this up. Okay, from the kitchen. So this is at the top of the gym area. We have 2 serving lines, 2 cashier stations. We have swinging, in addition to the overhead grill that separates the kitchen from the seating area. We also have swinging doors, so if the grill is down, you can still get easily back and forth from one space to the other. The office is it's a dual purpose space, office and dry storage, has direct supervision of both the loading area and the food prep area, strategically placed windows. We have high windows in the food prep area, again, trying to bring natural light even into the kitchen so that the staff has a better experience while they're working. Let's see, toilet fountain rooms and drinking fountains. So the idea being that students need to go to the bathroom, get a drink of water. They can do so right off the cafeteria without having to leave the space. And as I mentioned, the dual mop sinks, and again, cleanable surfaces throughout. Quarry tile, fiberglass wall paneling, and the same vinyl wrapped chip tiles. Obviously, it's an older school. There is still some abatement. The district has done a really good job of taking things out over time, so there's really not a lot left. For the most part, we're dealing with pipe fittings and insulation at the perimeter radiators, a little bit above ceilings, some where at the caulking at exterior doors and windows, really in the limited areas where we're attaching the new addition to the existing building. And then there is some vapor barrier under the slab where we're taking up the slab for the toilet rooms. The project is going to include new ventilation and new heating systems throughout the entire building. So new distribution ductwork, new rooftop units. Currently there is no ventilation system, so really improving the fresh air for the students and the teachers. We have air conditioning in all of the major areas. So the areas that you see with number 1, those are going to be air conditioned. We have what are called alternates. So basically what we're doing is we've designed the work, and if bids come in favorably, we'll be able to accept them or not accept them, or depending on how the funding goes, to air condition. And we have 2 breakout prices, one for the lower wing from 1949, which is the only 2-story elementary school in the district, and then the other for the single-story 1955 wing. Similar to the air conditioning, we are doing new lighting in all the major either new or renovated areas. Again, we have an alternate design for lighting, new lighting throughout the building. There are some potentials for other funding sources, so that may be something we explore outside of the project. We're doing new ceilings throughout. the entire first floor and then a good chunk of the second floor. New emergency lighting throughout the building, and we have a new generator. And again, there are two tiers, one that's in the base package and the second that there's an add alternate. The first one is to do the fire pump, which we are sprinklering the entire building. And with that, we need to have additional water flow, so there's a pump that has to go in and the generator that has to serve that to provide the water pressure required. So the generator will take care of the fire pump, it'll take care of heating, the kitchen equipment, and then we have an alternate, as I mentioned, to get the rest of the building. And then some other upgrades to things like secondary power and fire alarm and IT. We've been through, we've discussed with Pat Bradbury from Facilities and worked with Jeff Nielsen to make sure that we've got strategically placed cameras and card readers throughout the facility. And final thing, to let you know, we are right on target for budget. Our budget, as you can see, $13.560 million. We are right at it. The idea is perfect world. We are trying to design as much as we can right to that line without going over, get as much as we can for the project. So, we're 20,000 apart. As I meant, so one thing I want you to understand, there's currently we have 450,000 carried in the estimate for design estimating contingency. That's for things that haven't been thought out or assumed. The estimator is not going to be able to pick up everything, so they have a little bit in there to make sure that they're picking up anything else that might be needed. And there's also over $500,000 in owner's contingency. So there's about $1 million or so to catch us as a safety net if there are things that are forgotten. And then, so we're hopeful that we can exercise, I know Sherrod in particular is very hopeful that we will get the air conditioning accepted for the entire building, so we will see how things go. But if you take all of the ad alternates, we're a little over $1 million, so let's say we don't find too many surprises, we ought to be able to afford most of the extras that we're talking about. And hopefully you're still awake. Be happy to entertain any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have questions, board members? Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for the presentation. It's very thorough, and the graphical representation definitely helps to give a nicer sense of what the project's going to look like. The floor-to-ceiling windows that appear throughout the design, are those also blast and bulletproof?
No, currently the standard is only at the main entrance.
Are any of those exposed to the general public?
No. The ones that are all going down to the ground, those are all within that enclosed interior courtyard.
Okay.
So the ones that are on the outside are all fairly high up. That's at the gym.
Okay, that's great. And I'm not sure if this is a question for you or Mr. McNeil, but the size of the gym is extremely large for an elementary school. And in the pictures, I don't know if you were just showing it to show the various uses that it potentially could have, but there were lunch tables and also kids taking a PE class. Is that the expectation, that it will be used simultaneously for both of those things, or will it continue to function like it normally does, where PE is happening, lunch is not happening, lunch is happening, PE is not happening?
Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. That's a great question, Mr. DeYoung. Ideally, we would like to operate the way that we have been, where PE happens and lunches are separate. Mm-hmm. But we will explore that as the development takes place.
Is there any, it may seem like a strange question, but is there any concern that the gym is too big almost for an elementary school?
Not for me. I mean,
I'll jump in, Mr. DeYoung. So I would qualify your statement that the gym may be too large for what Milford's used to.
Okay, fair enough.
So I would not qualify that as a too large of a gym. In fact, it may finally be just right for elementary, because the activities that we have built in our curriculum are probably very different than when these school buildings have been built. So I would propose, although I don't know the dimensions, that it wouldn't be too big for us. In fact, I think the other 7 might be too small.
I love that. Okay, great, thank you. Just one last question on the timeline. So it looks like construction is set to start sometime in the spring of this year, hopefully, you know, and then it goes all the way through fall of 2023.
Correct.
How much of that construction will be happening while school is in session, and will it impact the rest of the building?
Right. So the first thing we want to do, obviously, is construct the new addition to be able to, you know, give ourselves some swing space. And the beautiful part about that is because it's completely exclusive and outside the footprint of the existing, it can be built completely and without really disturbing what goes on in the school. After that, yeah, I mean, the truth is, and we're working with, again, with Sherrod and with Pat Bradbury to try and figure out how to do it. There is, you know, there's no other way around it. We don't have places to put the kids. So there is going to be some amount of renovation of existing spaces. We're trying to keep it to a minimum. We're looking at trying to renovate like 2 classrooms in a month, essentially, because the work in the classrooms is fairly limited. It's the heating, the cooling, the ventilation systems, the sprinklers. So we really think it's, you know, you take the ceilings down, you put everything up, and then it goes back. We're not really doing, the floors were done fairly recently. It's not a renovation of the classrooms per se, it's really the systems. So that's some of why the schedule is so long. And then we're trying to, of course, get as much done as we can during the 2 summers, primarily the admin areas, but then, you know, the connecting corridors to try and, because there's really no way to take a corridor out of commission when the school is in session.
Right. Okay, great, thank you. And I would hope that you will keep the air conditioning in the project. It's I know it's the first thing that always goes, and I know that's budgetary reasons, but boy, it's so important, especially in a school building like Pumpkin Delight. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's why we have it as the first alternate. Yeah.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Ratner?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. It was a wonderful presentation, and thank you so much. I first like to compliment on the design elements. It's very exciting to see the mixture of materials that way with the wood and the metal. And I love the open spaces there for play and gardening and all. The flow looks great, and that gym is quite awesome. I had a couple of, and I hope the AC does come through. The question that I had was, I think you're a LEED certified architect group, so I assume when we talk about the abatement plan and then the new materials, it's all green, correct?
So one of the things, the state of Connecticut requires that any of the projects that receive funding that are over a certain threshold, and really for any project, especially one as this, we have to comply with the Connecticut high performance building standards. Connecticut, because you know, nothing is proprietary, and LEED as a rating system and getting it a LEED certified building, that is a proprietary system, so they can't make you require to do that. To meet the high performance building standards, it's essentially the equivalency of LEED silver. So when we're not actually going out and getting the building certified and going through the process, the design itself is equivalent to a LEED silver building.
Thank you.
Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. My quick question is the budget. It's based on, I know there's been a huge increase in inflation and materials and things like that. The price is right now based on the assumption that kind of inflation is where it is and the prices are where they are.
Yes, it is. Yeah, unfortunately we don't have a crystal ball right now, and conditions are kind of crazy, but that's why we're trying to be very agile in terms of evaluating alternate systems if we need to.
Any other questions from board members? Ms. Petrosky?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. I just have one question on the windows, since we're increasing the size of those. Do we have any anticipation of a change in the need for heating and/or the air conditioning costs based on that?
It's basically, it's taken into account, our engineers are, they know the size of the windows and they're running the models for it. They're still required to meet the reductions from code minimums. So, as part of the high performance building standards, there is a mandate to ASHRAE as the standard that you have to follow, and we do have to beat that energy performance. So we are still taking that into account.
Thank you.
Other questions? Everybody good? Okay, seeing none, we do have an action item on this agenda item. Mr. Petrosky, do you have a motion?
I do. I'd like to make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approve the final drawings, project manuals, and professional cost estimate in the Uniformat 2 format for the expansion and alterations project at Pumpkin Delight Elementary School, State Project number 084-0213E/A.
Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Fowler seconds. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time this evening.
I'd like to invite Mr. Nielsen for our annual safety and security update.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank the board and thank Dr. Kataya for allowing us to be here tonight to present on such an important topic, which is school safety and security. I'd also like to thank Captain Del Monte from the police department. Each year the police department participates in this presentation with us, which I think really represents the robust relationship we have with the police department as well as other community partners. So thank you, Garen, and thank you to the police department and your contributions and your support. Most of you have had this presentation in front of you. This first slide, this is the mission statement, vision statement, and the public school commitments to our school community in regards to school safety and security. And I would just like to highlight two of the commitments in this document. The first is providing a safe and secure school environment for our students, staff, and families. And this commitment supports and promotes learning physically, academically, socially, and emotionally. So the second commitment in here talks about relationships. And those relationships could be student to student. They could be student to staff, school to family, or school to community partners. And those relationships are so key, as we heard earlier in Mr. Brown's presentation. And I believe you heard a lot of this last month through the social and emotional learning presentation with Dr. Gillespie and Mr. Sean Smith. So I think between those three presentations, you've seen a lot of correlation in what we talk about with prevention and relationships, which will be a big focus of this presentation tonight. So the overview, we're going to talk about prevention and preparedness. And we're going to talk about our safety and security infrastructure and some updates to those. And we heard a little bit about that with the Pumpkin Delight project tonight, with the vestibules and the camera locations and card readers, et cetera, there. We're going to talk about partnerships and how key they are to our success here in Milford. And then we're going to end up with some of the pandemic mitigation strategies and resources we take advantage of here in Connecticut. So our district committees and teams. the district-wide school safety and security working group, as many of you know, is comprised of several school administrators, facilities, myself, IT, social workers, and school psychologists. But that group goes beyond that. It is the police department, it's the fire department, student transportation, and the health department. So anyone who may be involved in an emergency in Milford sits on this committee. And we review our incident management manual, we review the needs of the district, whether it's equipment or training, and that's all put into play. And we follow best practices of our federal, state, and local partners. At the school-based side, we have individual school committees and teams. 3 of those committees are required by state law, and that's our school safety and security committees, our safe school climate committees, and our school occupational safety committees. Again, on the individual level, many members of that school building sit on those committees, as well as parents, students, police, and fire officials. And then we have incident management teams in all the buildings as well, so if something does happen, an identified threat or hazard that we have in our plan, those teams are trained to respond to those types of activities in the buildings and use whatever measures we have in place and action plans to protect the students and other visitors in the building. So this is a new slide for this year, and again, prevention. We're hearing that through all these different presentations. Last month, the social and emotional learning presentation, which was the instructional highlight. I'd like to put 4 bullet points up on the screen here to really look at. When we think about positive attitudes towards oneself and others, empathy, connection and commitment to school, as Mr. Brown mentioned before, this all develops positive relationships between students, again, students and staff and so forth, which really builds and fosters a trust. So if something's happening in a school building, if a student's having a bad day, or they may be thinking of self-harm or harming others, that student can reach out to a trusted adult. If students hear of this about other students, again, they'll be more reluctant to report those behaviors or concerns to a trusted adult, so prevention can start and we're not getting to the intervention phase. As Mr. Brown mentioned in his presentation as well, student support services, those crisis response teams. The school resource officers, which Captain Del Monte will talk about in a few minutes. The school resource officers are involved in those, as well as newly hired social workers at the police department. The mental health screenings, again, a big piece of identifying things early. Someone may be struggling or may be having challenges. Well, if that can be identified at a low level, it can be dealt with before it escalates something of higher concern to us in the district here. So it's really a team approach. And if you look at the comment in here about the national emergency with mental health crisis among kids, and I think you've seen this in previous presentations between Mr. Brown's and the SCL one from last month. Preparedness. There's many layers to preparedness we have here in the district, and we like to front load on prevention and preparedness. Even though we cover all aspects of emergency management with response and recovery as well, these are the areas we like to focus on. So our school incident management manual, many of you know, we review this annually and throughout the year when new best practices become available. This is submitted to the state annually, and we also work on it with our district working group and individual school committees as well. The training that we have here in district, we provide annual safety and security training to all of our school employees, even our substitute teachers. And we do that in a wide variety of methods, which includes our frontline application of online videos, as well as building-based trainings. We do school bus safety drills with all of our students twice a year. And we do crisis drills once a month, whether it's a lockdown scenario, a building evacuation, or a fire alarm. We are required to do 1 drill a month per state law and report back to the state on July 1st on the frequency of the drills we've done, the types of drills, and also if our first responders have participated in those drills as well and seen a fair representation of those. I'm proud to say that our school resource officers and the fire marshals that are assigned to our schools go to these drills. They participate and they provide very valuable feedback to us to help build on our school incident management manual and what we need for equipment and needs. If we have an incident at school, we do debriefings. And those debriefings allow us to learn what we did well, did we follow the plan, what can we do better. And sometimes those debriefings are shared out with other schools as the best practices here in the district. As far as assessments, many of you know we do security assessments for different reasons. Obviously to build our plan, and again, equipment and training needs. The school resource officers are trained and they do assessments once a year for all the middles and high schools. And I also work with the crime prevention unit with the 2 officers there to do assessments at the elementary level. We also use these assessments for some of our grant applications. And we're currently in round 5 of the grant application with the state for a few things, which I'll talk about on another slide, which is this one here. So now we go from the prevention piece to our safety and security infrastructure. So again, security layers are prevention, but we're using a lot of these in a response mode if needed. They're funded by multiple resources, as you can see here. The last bullet here, school grants for school security enhancements. This can be done with our vestibule projects, and right now we're currently waiting, pending approval for 2 round 5 grant applications with the state for a multimedia grant, which ties in cameras and communications methods that go back to the police and fire dispatch center and provide mass notifications in our schools, which I'll talk about in a later slide. So security layers. In past presentations, I had a slide on each one of these. I condensed this for you for tonight's meeting. Access control. Each of our employees have a swipe card. It has their face and access credentials for their buildings. In addition, first responders also have the same access to our buildings as well. All police officers and fire officials as well. Our visitor management system is comprised of the door intercom system, which you see the picture of on your handout and on the screen here. Our security guards and our greeters are our main personnel for visitor management, which we use our School Gate Guardian module for. So we're able to swipe in someone's driver's license and gather the information for the visitor, determine they're a proper visitor for the building, date and timestamp the visit, and date and timestamp when they leave our buildings. It also provides a picture on that sticker that they'll wear inside the buildings. The School Gate Guardian system also checks for sex offender registry in all 50 states, and all of our staff are trained in how to look at that information and dissect it and share it with the school administrator when needed. Some additional security layers are video cameras. We have over 700 video cameras throughout the district in 14 schools and a central office. Our quick link devices are the equivalent of a panic alarm in all of our schools. They're centrally located in higher congested areas, main offices, gyms, media centers, and CAFs. Those have a direct link to the police and fire dispatch center, and also sends an email and a text message to a certain district group and all of our resource officers and some of the Milford Police detectives and Captain Del Monte. We have a district-wide portable radio system, as many of you know. So each school has its own radio frequency, and we can also talk district-wide. So in an emergency, we can talk with police, fire, health, and student transportation. So if something's happened, we can talk on that channel, then we can isolate that incident to the school afterwards once things are under control and one of our first responders take command of that scene. Hardened vestibules. Many of you know that we've gone through 3 phases of hardened vestibules at all of our schools. We're in the last phase, which is phase 4, which will involve Live Oaks and Cap Penn Middle School. Mr. Richatelli can probably speak on behalf of that. I know we are in a pre-bid process with that, and we are exploring when that may start once we get approval. Supply chain and some other things and cost of materials may affect that time schedule of when it starts, but we'll keep an eye on that and keep you notified of updates. The mass emergency notification, which this is new for us here in the district. We've actually purchased a product called Alertus, and I can probably share with Ms. Griffin to share out with you, is a case study from Ridgefield Public Schools. So you think about all the things we have in place in our buildings, the quick link devices, public address systems, external strobe lights and internal strobe lights. When there's an emergency in the building, there's a human factor involved in that. It's usually someone getting on a PA system and making a notification in the building, which is very common in school districts here in Connecticut and across the country. We're going to take that one step further, and we're going to link and leverage all of our existing technology that we have to create scenario-based template messaging, automated messaging, which will go out. And that could be done by the press of a quick link device. It can be done by a keystroke on a computer. It can be done by a principal, myself, or someone else in that building through a phone app. So you think about that. You're taking the human piece out of it, so they have to rehearse sometimes on how to say these announcements. It's going to be automated messaging, which is going to take time away from how we need to respond to incidents in these schools and really put the effort in to get people to react and use that action plan in the building. It just increases the amount of time to get things done, and again, it leverages all those technologies. So we have a few phases for this project. Phase 1 is going to tie in our computers in all of our classrooms, and it'll tie in the ViewSonics if the teacher is casting on it. And those pre-canned messages will go out over that. Our phase 2, which I proposed in this year's budget, is to interface that with our PA systems. So now all of our technology will be single point activation to get those messages out quicker. So now I just would like to talk about partnerships. Again, this is key to our success. And I'm going to have Captain Del Monte come up and talk a little bit about the police department and what they do.
Evening, everybody. You can hear me okay, right? Nice to see you all again in person. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Garen Del Monte. I'm a captain with the Milford Police Department, and I currently oversee the SRO program with Sergeant Chris Doyle. So I can't take credit for this very nice graphic. That is all Jeff Nielsen. To introduce the SROs to you, Foreign High School has our senior SRO. He's been there the longest at this point. Pat Taylor is still there. Jonathan Law has Matthew Goldfuss. Harborside and the Academy has Karen Banks. Our newest SRO is at West Shore with Sue Clark. And East Shore has Stephen LaChavo. All of them are doing incredibly well, have blended right into their school climates, and are highly involved in all the school activities. I'm not going to go too deep into what an SRO actually does, because I think by now, since it's been around since 2013, we kind of know the day-to-day activities of the school resource officer. So I'll just hit on the high points for you. There's some core training involved to become an SRO. They are a very carefully selected and specifically trained police officer to enter into your school buildings. So they'll go through approximately 1 month of training. This is on top of actual regular police training. So there's a basic and advanced SRO class, which basically teaches them how to implement a successful program in a school building. And there's a crime prevention through environmental design, which looks at how to assess your physical environment to improve safety. Adolescent mental health training, and that is an obvious understanding of why that's so important. School-based law and active aggressor preparedness and response. We do have some additional trainings with autism awareness and understanding students with special needs. Understanding the teen brain and how victimization challenges development. Developing relationships with diverse students, that's our way of saying that's our implicit bias training for SROs. Restorative practices, mental health first aid, and the behavioral threat assessment is in bold here because we actually do that in partnership with the Board of Education. So like Mr. Brown indicated earlier, next month we'll be going to a training with Board of Ed members, and that's just another way that it speaks to our relationship with all of you. Perfect segue into relationships, I guess. Relationships built on trust foster a supportive connection with the SRO. I know we stress relationships a lot because that's how we're so effective. I was at SRO from 2013 to 2016 at West Shore, and I can tell you that the relationships that we build within the school allow students to feel comfortable enough with the community helper that's in the building to come to us and divulge things that they need help with that they may not otherwise tell somebody else. We can then communicate with other members of our community, whether it be school employees, DCF, Bridges, Clifford Beers, Bethel Shelter, and our new police social workers to implement appropriate services for the child, for the family, for the staff, that have a successful resolution to whatever crisis they're currently enduring. And we refer to those with the Board of Ed as an adverse childhood experience, which we try to mirror the SRO program goals with your SEL goals here with the Board of Education. That's really the SRO program in a nutshell. You could always reach out to me at any given time that you like. I'm always accessible to everybody. Dr. Fettigan can attest to that. We spend many nights and weekends on the phone talking about our schools and how we're working together. And I will say that the relationship with the Board of Education and the Police Department is one of envy of other communities. And I know I say that a lot, but we have a great back and forth and a great dialogue, and I am thankful for that. And it just works really well for our kids and our staff. Thank you.
So I know in the past with our school resource officer portion of the presentation, we brought up statistics and other things, and I think you've seen those over the years. Our numbers have been incredible. The number of positive contacts that the SRO team has had in the high school and the middle school levels, especially now with the pandemic and the challenges that everyone's facing, they just they stepped up and really been a big asset in how we're managing this pandemic with our kids. So again, thank you for the SROs. So Fire Marshal's office, there is a fire marshal assigned to a certain group of schools. Usually it's about 3 or 4 schools here in the district. They sit on the committees, as I mentioned before, and some of the things they do is they participate in annual fire prevention programs at elementary schools, the poster contests. Currently right now we're doing fire inspections in all of our buildings. They're starting with the elementary schools, moving up through the middles and then to the high schools next, and that's done in partnership with our facilities department to make sure that we are in compliance with fire code. And any best practices they see that we should be doing, they're sharing that information with us as well. The Milford Health Department provides support and guidance to our school community. I said last year at our presentation, they're our new best friends, and they still are. They've provided so much support during this pandemic, and we speak with them on a daily basis just to make sure that we are up to date on current trends, current public health data, and what direction we should be going in. So as far as the pandemic, the resources we're currently using haven't changed. We're following federal, state, and local guidance and requirements for the governor's executive orders. We meet, for a while there it was a weekly phone call with State Department of Education and Department of Public Health on Tuesday mornings with all superintendents and other stakeholders within the district. I know, Deepa Joseph, Joan Campbell, and everyone else are on those calls with us every Tuesday, following what the guidance is. We're expecting hopefully some guidance tomorrow in regards to masking and where we're going with that. But again, it's driven us with the Adapt, Advance, Achieve document. We've been following that throughout the pandemic for nearly 2 years now. And that helped to refine our safe return to in-person and continuity of services plan for the 21-22 school year. So we'll continue to follow those documents. Our mitigation suite, again, things haven't changed here. Most of us all know this. It's second nature to us now with masks, hand washing, social distancing, etc. Isolation rooms. Some things we've added this year, vaccination clinics. So we've done some vaccination clinics. Again, when the vaccine became available for the 12 and up, we provided those vaccine clinics in partnership with Milford Health Department and Griffin Health, their community services vans. When the vaccine came out for 5 to 11-year-olds, we also partnered with them again recently, actually doing vaccine clinics at the elementary schools, all elementary schools. And we'll do our second clinics, at the end of February going into March. So again, we're providing access to people and where it might be more of a comfort level at their elementary school, and hopefully people are taking advantage of those opportunities. One thing we've also participated in, which we started last week, was the COVID Detect program, and that's sponsored through the state of Connecticut. It's funded. It's free for school districts, and it's voluntarily for parents to put their children into if they'd like to. This is more of a screening program. So again, we want to get ahead of things. So if we're able to test asymptomatic students who want to volunteer for the program, that they can enroll in the service. Last week was our first week of starting a program, and we tested 433 students across 14 schools. and we had 2 positive results. So I think that's showing that our mitigation strategies are working here in the school and in the school community. And we'll continue to monitor those results and work with the health department, as using that for good data for them as well. So as you see, all the partnerships we have here and the many things we have going on, and I could stay here for hours with you talking about a lot of this stuff. Jim's giving me a funny look when I say that, but we're very passionate about it. We're passionate about providing those safe environments for our students and our staff and our families. And we have many things in place, and we've said it before, we're ahead of the curve here in Milford. We really are. I chair a Region 2 committee for school safety and security, which makes up about 30 to 31 municipalities. And I also chair a school advisory committee for KERMA. And when I talk to my peers in those groups, and the things we talk about and we share and we network, and we're the envy of a lot of other school districts in many areas of what we do. So I'm proud of that, and I'm glad we're able to provide those safe environments for our kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. This is a very important topic, yes. Do we have questions from board members? Ms. Ratner?
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen, as well, excuse me, Captain Dill. In regards to going back to 2013, could you refresh me of how historically it all began and how the funding goes, or maybe this is a Mr. Richard Kelly question, and how the funding goes till now? Either of you help? Thank you.
So in 2013, we were always kind of entertaining having the SRO program come into Milford. We really got into studying the program around the state, and I believe, I don't really know the backstory of how we really got off the ground, but I know Sandy Hook was one of the initiating factors for obvious reasons, right? 2012, we all started being selected for the training courses. The original 4 of us went and got certified, and all SROs are actually nationally certified. We can go anywhere in the country and be an SRO. And then we started in the spring of 2013, I think it was February. So Sandy Hook definitely prompted the discussions, and then the community was great in support of it, and we're here 8 years later.
Thank you.
You asked about the funding? It's the 50% split between the city and the board.
Oh, yes. There is still an MOU in place between the Board of Education and the SROs in terms of the salary agreements and things like that, and just for the roles that we serve and the functions that we serve in a school building for that.
Other questions from board members? Mr. Fowler?
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. Obviously, just that social media is typically brought up during these meetings, and also because students, live online. Just take me a little bit about, when you assess a threat, and that you talked a lot about relationships. Just tell me, because we can't monitor every student's social media account. Could you tell me a little bit about when you do see it, or how do you hear a threat? Take me through the process of that, of countering that.
But I'll say, myself and Captain Del Monte and Sergeant Doyle from the Special Investigations Unit, who is a direct supervisor for school resource officers, we communicate frequently on a lot of things, and the SROs really do a great job with teaming up with the school administrators. So we're seeing a lot of the social media stuff at the middle school and the high school levels, but I think this year we could probably qualify by saying there's a lot of activity at the middle school level. And that goes into a lot of education from the school resource officers to make sure they're aligning with what we do in the schools. If we hear of something, usually a lot of the time it's a student bringing forward the information to a trusted adult. And that goes back to my relationship building I spoke about in the beginning of my presentation. So those kids have a commitment to the school and a commitment to their peers to make sure they're providing a safe environment. So they're bringing that information forward to a trusted adult, usually a teacher or a building administrator or even an SRO, and then that team comes to play in that building and say, okay, let's look at what we have here. Can we trace this back and see the footprint of this social media threat or potential threat, and then look at, again, record review of past incidents, and really get that team approach going.
Great, thank you. And just maybe one more question about the app. It's called Alert Us, and when will all the phases be completed by?
So Alert Us, we just began the implementation stage, so I'm working with our IT department right now. So we have to, without getting too technical, we have to develop some servers and get a lot of our IP addresses kind of linked up with a lot of the technology we have going on right now, and then do some testing. So once we do get that in place, we're going to pick one school, and then we're going to pilot it there and see how things go and work out any kinks we may have. This program is used throughout Connecticut with a lot of school districts with very good success. Ridgefield, again, being one of them, and I'll share that case study out to you through Ms. Griffin. I know Fairfield University uses it, a few other colleges here in Connecticut, Goodwin College, and it's used nationally. And it's, we looked at a lot of programs and we felt this was the best for what we want to do and what we have for existing leverage and our partnership with the police department, because now, you know, a lot of our stuff goes back there, but now we can centralize it and really, again, reduce the amount of time it takes people to act. And that's what's most important of it.
Oh, great, thank you.
Mr. DeYoung?
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen and Captain Del Monte. This is always one of my favorite presentations as well. And if it were up to me, we'd put it at the top of the agenda so it's not pushing 10 o'clock while we're talking about it. Couple of questions. First of all, the slide that you referenced about the SRO's successes that you've had in the past, if you could put that back in, I actually think that's really valuable at, you know, reinforcing what the SROs are doing. To me, that was, when I first started on the board, that was the first sort of introduction I had to the SRO program, and boy, it's eye-opening to see that. So if you could add that back in next year, that would be great. I wanted to ask about the recent fentanyl overdoses that have been happening at a handful of Connecticut schools, and if you could just talk a little bit about what our processes are for drug screenings and how we go about making sure that that's not happening in our schools.
I think we can probably tag team this, and I'll start off with it. We do get a lot of information, a lot of intelligence information from a group called CTIC, which is a fusion center here in Connecticut of federal, state, and local partners, and they trickle information down. So we are privy to some of that information. I know the police department gets more sensitive information on this. They identified a few areas in Connecticut where they believe that fentanyl recently might have been mixed with marijuana and some other things, which I think proved to be not unfounded, but they couldn't substantiate a lot of the claims with it. Obviously, it's on our minds because we know the dangers of it. So we have been speaking with the Milford Health Department. Like, all of our nurses have Narcan in their offices. The school resource officers have Narcan. And we're looking to expand that program because if you can go, anyone from this board or anyone in the community can go out and get trained in Narcan and have that supply with them. So we're looking at the best way to kind of tackle that and provide more resources in the schools if needed, and then keep an eye on trends of that in here locally and in Connecticut. So again, those partnerships, like I said, myself speaking with Captain Del Monte and Sergeant Doyle on a daily basis. If anything does come to light here locally in Milford, we'd be made aware of that pretty much immediately.
Yeah, and I'll echo that, but I'll speak to those relationships with the kids now too, because all this stuff is also happening outside the building. Mm-hmm. So the SROs are in constant communication with our patrol officers, who a patrol officer has contact with a family or a kid or something like that. They relay information back to the SRO. SRO can then follow up with school staff appropriately. So if we see some sort of deviation from normal behavior, we can say something may not be right here. What is it? So if we can identify what that problem is, such as this, before it becomes an actual issue that manifests itself in a building, we can try and get in front of it. So it's all about sharing information really around the community in the school. And, you know, so far we've been somewhat successful, but we don't want to miss something that can be critical for our school.
Sure. All right, thank you. Yeah, and it seems like between the public school system, the police department, the health department, the fire department, we have such a great loop, like you guys mentioned, and we're way ahead of the game. So I think that's terrific. Just one last question for you, Mr. Nielsen. You mentioned funding sources a handful of times in your presentation. I'm wondering if there are things that you feel we could better support you through the budget process and provide for your department to improve the quality of the services that we can provide?
I think right now we've done a pretty good job of where we're at, especially with local and state funding. Again, many of you have seen my proposed budget for some items that have come out. I mentioned before, I think alertness is a very promising thing for us to really tie in, link, and leverage those technologies that we have. We are doing replacement cycles of cameras. We do have a lot of outdated cameras in the school district, so we've begun that process in our first phase. And I can kind of let you know as well, when we do that, we also look at some of the new technology that comes out. So for example, if I replace a very old camera that was put in 2010, which if you looked at the view of this and you look at the view of cameras today, it's night and day. Look at your TVs at home, right?
Yeah.
It's like comparing a black and white TV to a 4K LED right now. So it's just, there's a lot of technology enhancements. We're looking at, taking one camera with a licensing fee and a cable and turning that into a multi-head camera. So we may spend a little more on that one device, but we're saving on the maintenance and the software agreements and the installation of cables in our buildings. So just one area that we're doing things in. We're also looking at radio replacements as well, because we initially, invested a lot of money into the radio system back in 2013. So a lot of the portable radios are not supported anymore, so we have to find new ones.
And just to piggyback on what you just said, the radios that our staff have, are those provided by the police department, or do we pay for those? How does that work?
We pay for those.
Okay, but they interface with the police department's radio system?
Correct, yeah. We can program those radios to have a district-wide radio channel. So that district-wide radio channel is given to certain people, building administrators, incident management team members, school resource officers, security guards, and others.
Okay, great. Thank you both. It's great.
Thank you.
Ms. Wolf-Boyton, did I see your hand up before?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Nielsen, you talked about your passion for this program, and actually both from you and the captain, one of the things I enjoyed most about your presentation was you both seemed to ooze with enthusiasm as you talk about it. And just quickly, I'm wondering, is the scope and depth of the partnership we seem to have here in Milford, is it something that most school districts have, or is it unique here to Milford?
I would say our partnership here is pretty unique, and most of you may know my background. I was an officer at the police department for 20 years before I came over here. So I had well-established relationships with, again, police department because I was there, fire department, health department, but everyone really takes a position on this to make sure we're doing the right thing here in Milford. Again, I talk to Deepa Joseph probably 2-3 times a week on the phone. The fire department, I'm reaching out to Anthony Fino, the senior fire marshal, or Tim Suden, the deputy fire marshal, about things, at least once a week. Darren, if we weren't here tonight, we'd probably be on the phone on Valentine's Day, and our wives would appreciate that. So, and again, coming from where I came into the police department, Chief Mello really kind of inspired all of us to really, enjoy what we do, find something we enjoy doing, and both of us have kind of fell into that niche.
If I could, oh boy, sorry. If I could just add one thing. I think the roots of the great relationship that we have go deep over many, many years, but it really blossomed, and it took the tragedy at Sandy Hook. A week after Sandy Hook, the mayor, the police chief, and the superintendent at the time, Dr. Fieser, created the School Safety and Security Working Group, and that group still meets today. But back in 2012 and 13, and really into 13, 14, that group was meeting on a weekly basis, and some of these relationships from all of the different departments that came together because they recognized a real critical need to provide safety and security in our schools as a core piece of what we do in the school system. That's really how it's kind of blossomed, and through the the work of Chief Mello and all of the department all the way down, it's really been amazing. And the fire department too, health department of course. So we do really have a what I believe is a unique situation, and it's a really good situation for our kids, our staff, and our families.
And I can say, going back to the committee the Region 2 committee that I chair, many people in that committee ask me, what's your secret? How do you guys do this? How do you get along so well? How do you guys know, who to be involved with? And we share that secret out. Hopefully, it expands over to other school districts, and they can follow what we do here in Milford.
I had two questions. I'm not sure if they'd be for Captain Del Monte or for Mr. Nielsen. But in talking about the relationships, you mentioned ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences. Do police officers have specific training in ACEs?
Yes and no. So we don't call it that. We just basically have training in childhood trauma and the effects of trauma on the adolescent brain. So we do have training in terms of that. SROs have more advanced training in terms of what it looks like within a school. So we try to mirror your language. So we go through ACEs stuff and things and mental health first aid to really all make sure we're on the same page, so when we're conversing with each other, I can know what Dr. Fadigan is talking about and she can know what I'm talking about, and vice versa.
Great, thank you. And then I think I heard Mr. Brown mention this, police social workers. Did he say they're new, relatively new?
Yeah, so we just hired 2 full-time social workers at the police department, and they came on 2 weeks ago, maybe? So they're going to work with SROs, with school PPS staff, and engage in some of the trainings that you guys hold to really further our goals of having service within the community and giving services to families who need it.
That's great. Another layer, really.
Yes,
Very
exactly.
good. Thank you. I love this program too. So it's a program that I hope will never go away, and I hope it always has the support of the community. It's a fantastic program. Were there any other questions from board members? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a few items left on our agenda. Shouldn't be too much longer. We have the Human Resources Report. Ms. Kapazna, I know, has left. Does somebody else have her report tonight?
I do. Thank you, Mrs. Glennon. In your packages, Mrs. Kapazna's monthly HR report, which includes the postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, stipends, things like that. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and if I can't answer them, we certainly will get you the answers to them. Usually the question comes up about retirements, and at this point in the year we have 10 retirements. 2 have already left, and 8 of them are at various points throughout between now and the end of the school year. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Are there any questions on the Human Resources Report tonight? Okay, I see none.
Okay, and
Go
on
on to the
disbursements.
disbursement.
Yep. In your package is a listing of all of the disbursements for the district for the month of January, over the amount of $1,500. Those items that are listed in yellow are COVID related, and also I believe that there are some asterisks which indicate that they will be eligible for reimbursement through our insurer for the flood damage that took place during Hurricane Ida. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on the disbursements report.
Questions? Ms. Petrosky?
I just have one clarification, if you would. On page 2, for account 3308, what does ECF stand for?
Let me just get there.
Sorry, it's towards the bottom of the second page of the disbursement report.
Oh, ECF. It's the Emergency Connectivity Fund. That was, it's another COVID-related emergency connectivity fund that is a grant program through ARP, and we received approximately $1.2 million in ECF funding.
So is this amount outside of ARP?
No. What this is, there's a federal program called E-Rate, where there are reimbursements for libraries and school systems. The ECF grant program is run through the same mechanisms that E-Rate is, and we have an E-Rate processor who actually does the filings for us, and this is their fee. They receive, I believe by contract, about 5% of what monies we take in from the E-Rate program, or in this case, the ECF program. Since it was in excess of $1 million, this is the fee that we have to pay to them, which comes out of the grant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you just quickly refresh us on what the E-rate program is? Is that easy to do?
Well, it's not all that easy, and it's a
layman's terms.
Yeah, layman's terms. It's a program that was started way back with telecommunications. Now it's to do with technologies, and it allows for certain reimbursements through the Federal Communications Commission, I think, and it provides reimbursements for technology enhancements.
Great, that's perfect, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions for Mr. Riccitelli? Okay, I see none, thank you.
Thank you.
And I believe that is the end of the superintendent's report. We move on to consent agenda. Do you have a motion, Ms. Griffin, Ms. Petrosky?
Yes, I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves the consent agenda items: consideration of minutes, January 10th, 2022 business meeting, January 12th, 2022 budget workshop, January 13th, 2022 budget workshop, and January 19th, 2022 budget workshop.
Is there a second?
I second.
Mr. Fowler seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Board comment. Anybody have board comment this evening? Mr. DeYoung.
Thank you. Just briefly, I'd like to excuse me, thank all the members of the public that came out tonight to speak. I know maybe one of them is still here, but I appreciate the comments, and I know and am very confident in administration that they will provide us with very detailed information about how the decision was made, what the decision is, and when it will be implemented. I share a lot of the same concerns that were brought up tonight for my own fourth grade twins that go to Orchard Hills School, as was mentioned tonight. And I really know it's a very difficult decision. And if it does come before the board, I wouldn't necessarily say where I stand on it, but I would like to say that I think it's important that we listen to the people who are very close to this issue, meaning the health, the people who are in charge of the Department of Health, both at the state level and at the local level. And I hope that we will be given an opportunity to hear from our health director and also Dr., I'm going to get his name wrong, Carlson, I think, in future meetings. Excuse me? Thank you. In future meetings so that we can, really get an in-depth idea of how the decision was made and why the decision was made and what that looks like for families, because I think it's just such a critical piece to where we are in this pandemic at this point. So I appreciate the comments from the public, and I know that they can trust that we will make every concerted effort to understand what this decision is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeYoung. Any other board comment? Mr. Fowler.
Thank you, Ms. Glennon. I would also like to echo what Mr. DeYoung said, and obviously there are a lot of moving pieces, but I would just like to express my hope that the impending guidelines that we receive from the state and various public health agencies help our students, staff, and community return to a sense of normalcy soon. So, again, I know no one's here, but I'd like to just thank them for coming out and speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Fowler. Any other board comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
Mr. Fowler seconds. Do we have anyone objecting to a motion to adjourn? Okay, seeing none, we'll be adjourned at 10:06. Thank you so much, board members. We'll see you in 2 weeks for our committee, the whole meeting.